welcome everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order for the Corporation of the Township of Portsmouth on September 25th, 2024. And I'll begin with roll call. Councillor Hurst.
Present.
Councillor Goyda.
Present.
Councillor Spoulos.
Present.
And this will begin our moment of reflection. All right, that concludes our moment of reflection. Before we get into the formal part of the meeting, I just want to give some instruction to people joining us today. That's great to see you out. We're going to have a bunch of delegates come to the front table. It's not appropriate to interject from the gallery. If that happens, I will have to stop the conversation, and you and whoever interferes will be engaging with myself and myself only. To address council, you have to be at this table. Now, staff have put out pieces of paper that if you have a concern, a health concern, a hearing issue, there's a process. I'm going to maybe turn it over to Justine, and she can explain that process if you need to get staff's attention during the meeting.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. If you're having issues with hearing a delegate, hearing a member of staff, or hearing a member of council, if you can just raise your arm and make a fist, then a member of staff will come over and discreetly see how we can best assist you. And if you do have any questions or concerns from this meeting, if you can please ask staff at the meeting, either through email, you can ask at our front counter, which staff is most appropriate to answer the question, or through a phone call.
And lastly, I generally, in a procedural bylaw, it permits 10 minutes for delegations. Generally speaking, I don't hold that to a firm number, but in the interest of us having a full agenda and the amount of delegates today, I'm going to be sticking to that 10 minutes per delegate, more rigid. So just a warning. And with that, we'll start the meeting. So I a resolution for confirmation of the agenda, please.
Yes. The council approves the September 25th, 2024 agenda and addendum as circulated. And the council approves the additions to the agenda as follows. Consent item 6.1.7, questions received from council and the corresponding information provided by staff. Confidential item 14.1, litigation or potential litigation, including matters for administrative tribunals affecting a municipality or local board regarding a property assessment matter. And the council advanced agenda item 9.3.2, the report ADM 2024-044 regarding the shooting range bylaw and first reading directly following delegations.
All right, can you move that, please? Councillor Spoulos, Councillor Goyda, any questions or concerns? All right, all in favor? That's carried. All right, is there any declaration of pecuniary interest today? Seeing none, can you remind me to ask Councillor Bailey when she asks about the declaration if I forget? All right, we'll get started. So I'll invite our first delegate down to the table. I believe that's Mr. Moser. And Dale, sorry, I apologize. I didn't read far enough along the line.
No worries, that's okay.
We're gonna need more water as the delegate.
Yeah.
All right, welcome. You can begin when you like.
Okay. Okay, well, good morning. I'd like to first thank Council, Mayor Sealy, and Pushland staff for giving us the opportunity to meet with you today. My name is Matt Moser. I'm the president of the Galt Sportsman's Club. I'm joined today by my colleague, Dr. Dale Harrison, who is a fellow member of our board of directors. We are here today to introduce the Sportsman's Club Galt, located at 6542 Gore Road, to the Pushland Township Council and staff, and to briefly raise 3 points of the newly proposed bylaw. The Galt Sportsman's Club is a not-for-profit, private members shooting club and recreation facility. We are situated on over 250 acres in Pushland Township. Since our establishment in 1954, the club has grown to approximately 1,600 members with a wide range of interests. Over the past 70 years, we have operated safely with proper zoning as a private shooting club with regular inspections by the Chief's Firearms Office, also referenced as the CFO, to ensure member and community safety. There has never been a serious injury involving a firearm at our facility, in all of our years of operation. The club offers a safe and controlled environment for shooting enthusiasts, serving many Pushlands residents and providing an alternative to unregulated shooting across Pushlands Township and the surrounding area. The Sportsman's Club Galt offers indoor and outdoor pistol ranges, indoor and outdoor rifle ranges, as well as indoor and outdoor archery ranges, a stock trout pond, and a clay target facility that has trap, skeet, and a world-class sporting clay course. We have consistently responded to and implemented any recommendations or requirements from the CFO. The club adheres to regulations including the Canadian Firearms Program, shooting range design and construction guidelines, the shooting club's range and regulations. Over the years, we have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into enhancing safety, beautifying our property, and reducing sound impact on our neighbors. We continue to remain open to work with Pushlands Council and the township, as well as our neighbors, on a reasonable noise mitigation effort. Maintaining and upgrading our facilities injects several $100,000 annually into the local economy, benefiting local businesses, generating tax dollars. Our diverse membership includes men and women of all backgrounds. The Sportsman's Club Galt provides a meeting and training facility for a diverse and dedicated membership. Our members adhere to strict safety and conduct codes to ensure both personal and community safety. Many of the club's members are active in highly competitive shooting competitions and have won significant local, provincial, national, and international awards. Competing at these levels requires significant and continuous practice to maintain their skills. Some of our members also compete in international skeet, which is an Olympic shooting discipline. 4 of these athletes are sponsored by the Shooting Federation of Canada, nationally recognized. It's a nationally recognized organization. Excuse me. In addition to providing target shooting for members, the club hosts competitive shooting events for both local and international levels across multiple disciplines. The Galt Sportsman's Club has earned a high profile and international reputation for the quality of our facilities. In 2013, the club hosted the English World Sporting Clay Championships, which featured teams from New Zealand, Australia, Europe, the United States, Mexico, South America, as well as Canada. This prestigious championship rotates annually, and the Galt Sportsman's Club was awarded the International Clay Target Shooting Federation World Championship in 2025. However, we have declined this opportunity due to the uncertainties surrounding potential conflicts with the newly proposed township bylaw. This event would have brought over 200 international competitors, many of whom often combine this competition with a lengthy family vacation, contributing to substantial revenue to local and provincial hotels, restaurants, and other tourism-related industries. It was anticipated that next year's event would have significantly bolstered both the local and the provincial economies. By declining to host this event, this revenue was lost from our community and instead directed to Alberta's local economy. The club has always been active in supporting our local community. Over the years, we have made significant donations on various hospitals and research foundations in memory of past members. Over the decades, we have also sponsored a fishing derby for the Help a Child Smile Foundation, which provides critically ill children a day of fishing in a controlled and safe environment. Donations are collected and contributed to the foundation, helping sponsor family trips to Disney, similar to likes of the Make-A-Wish Foundation. The event is free for families, with the club funding the restocking of the pond. Members also volunteer to assist whenever needed, ensuring a fun and safe experience for everyone involved. For the past 8 years, the club has also partnered with the Childhood Cancer Canada through the Clays for Kids events, which raises funds for pediatric oncology research. Since 2017, this event has been highly successful, generating well over $2.5 million, which all goes directly to the oncology research programs. The Sportsman's Club Galt provides the facilities, the targets, the machines for the event, as well as many of our members volunteer as safety officers, support field setup, and act in many other supporting capacities throughout the day. The club also makes substantial donations, which are complemented by contributions from our members. The club also hosts fundraising events for Ducks Unlimited and Delta Waterfowl, the proceeds of which go to advance their work in wetland preservation and the environment protection initiatives. For decades, residential buildings have been encroached on the periphery of the club's property. Aware of this encroachment, the club has gone to great expenses to build and maintain high berms and acoustic shielding to mitigate noise. And we agree that there's more work to be done. Last week, we reviewed the newly proposed bylaw and would like to raise 3 key points at this early stage. We would also like to request an opportunity to meet with Bushlands Council to discuss these before taking a formal position. Our first point on the licensing versus noise bylaw. We are surprised and disappointed that Bushlands opted for a licensing bylaw rather than a noise bylaw, as we have previously discussed. Licensing bylaws are far more complex and costly to administer. A noise bylaw could achieve similar outcome in a simpler, more efficient manner. We would like to understand the rationale behind this choice and discuss potential value of a noise bylaw approach. Our second point, the range hours in Appendix A. While the permanent range hours in the appendix seem manageable, we seek clarity on the temporary schedule and the 2-year phase-in. We also question some details regarding special events, particularly the restrictions on Mother's Day and Father's Day. Additionally, the definition of the point of reception appears inconsistent with provincial guidelines, and we would like further explanation. Point 3, preamble and staff report. The bylaw preamble and staff report do not acknowledge the many positive contributions of the Sportsman's Club Galt or the recreational opportunities it provides its members, including many members of Bushlands Township. We are particularly concerned with the first whereas clause in the bylaw as it relates to our club. We hope to gain more insight and with further discussion with staff. In conclusion, the township should be aware that the costs associated with improved sound mitigation could easily exceed well over $1 million, coupled with significant restrictions and fines could quickly render the club financially unviable. These restrictions and increased costs may necessitate a substantial rise in dues, making the club too expensive and potentially unappealing to many current members, who may then seek out other area clubs with lower costs and fewer restrictions. While this may be the unintended consequence of this bylaw, this could ultimately push the club towards insolvency. We respectfully request the opportunity to meet again with you, Bushlands staff and council, to discuss these 3 points. Again, 1, why a licensing bylaw was chosen over a noise bylaw. 2nd, clarification on the intent of the details of the regulation. And 3rd, ensuring a more balanced staff report and preamble that acknowledges the benefits of the Sportsman's Club Galt. We'd like to thank you for your time, and we look forward to working with you to develop a fair and reasonable bylaw that addresses the concerns of the community while ensuring the future of our club. We do remain committed to this process and maintaining a positive relationship with the township. Again, thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Matt. Doctor, did you want to add anything?
Nothing to add
Not
at this point.
All right. One thing I will state is that meeting with all of council is likely not going to happen. First off, if we meet all of council, that's a meeting, and that's public, and it's also inappropriate.
Okay.
Your points are documented. I don't think it's appropriate to respond to them today unless the CAO wants to. However, you will be receiving that feedback. I can give some clarity on the reasoning for the interim schedule. If an organization is working towards compliance of a bylaw, we have to have something in there to incentivize them to do that. Because if we were to say, oh, we'll give you 5 years. I'm just making something up. 5
Understood.
years to come into compliance. What's the motivation if there isn't a reduced schedule or some implications of not being in compliance? So we have to balance that. Can't just, we have to look after the interests of the public as well. We are held accountable. Well, you just gave X company a free pass for 5 years. No, here's some concessions they've had to make as they work towards it. So is that what's going to stay in the bylaw? That's up for discussion yet, but that's part of the reasoning. We have to be accountable to the public, to hold you accountable to reach that goal.
We
So-
respect that.
Okay, so I just want to provide that. Okay, I will open up to council, see if they need any clarification or if they have any questions. Councilor Hurst?
Just one. Can you maybe, at a very, very high level, just explain maybe how the club's evolved since COVID? I think that's some of the commentary I've received from the public is the real or perceived, but I think it's important that we hear from both of you, how the club's evolved since say 2020 in terms of operations, activities. It's on in the briefing notes, the memberships has increased. Can you maybe just speak to that, just so we get a better understanding of what that looks like?
Certainly. Do you wanna-
Yeah, sure, I could handle that. Prior to COVID, particularly in the clay section, we had, the club was open to members of the public. So licensed firearms owners that weren't members could come and pay a fee and shoot on the clay target courses. With the COVID restrictions, we stopped the guest policy. And so people couldn't, licensed firearms owners, and there were hundreds of them that would come on a fairly regular basis. They could no longer attend. So those individuals were then forced to either pony up and buy a membership or not shoot. And so we had a large influx of members join during that time. Now, the net result wasn't really an increase in shooting, and we have documentation that maps out the clay targets that we purchase. We have purchase order records from going back many, many years. And so we know that the number of targets hasn't increased significantly. And so that volume of shooting hadn't increased, but our membership increased because those people that would come and maybe shoot once a month as a guest became members and then started shooting once a month as a member. So that was, and certainly we're aware of the perceived increase during that COVID period, because coupled with a rise in membership, naturally we would all think that would lead to an increased amount of shooting. And also too, when we were shut down, everything was pretty quiet. And then once it started back up, and members were obviously, just like golf courses and all the other activities that were shut down, members were pretty keen to get back at it. And so again, we can appreciate that members would perceive an increase, even though our statistics show that there really wasn't a significant increase.
Well, that's helpful just to see how that membership has evolved.
Yeah.
I guess from part-time to.
Yeah, it was about, we think it's about 200 to 300 members that were using the facilities as guests, but then became members during that period.
Just a couple more very brief questions. Do you have a rough percentage of your members that would be township residents versus coming in from utilizing the facility from outside the township?
We can get that information for you.
I think it'd be interesting, I think, in some of the commentary, just understanding what that dynamic looks like. Maybe the last one, maybe this is a follow-up to the first question. Within the various shooting activities, for lack of a better way of saying that, is there one versus others that are what you would call a growth sector within the sportsman club? For instance, you spoke to the clay shooting. I've read the briefing notes, and there's a lot of activities going on. Can you maybe just explain what's been static versus increasing or decreasing, kind of like a large high level?
Yeah, things have been fairly static across the discipline. Certainly in the handgun shooting range, that we've seen a decrease. There was recent federal regulations that no longer allow for the transfer of pistols. And so there's not new members coming into that discipline. So that's one that we've seen sort of decline. And the other disciplines, I don't think there's been any sort of uptick in growth. We always have new members moving to the area and leaving the area. So the attrition rate's been pretty balanced with the new members across all disciplines, except, like I say, except the pistol section, we have seen a decline.
And one thing I'd just like to add to that, over the COVID shutdown, lockdown, however we want to refer it as, over that period, some of our members had more time on their hands, and we did allow them to shoot on alternate days. And that involved shooting, I believe, on Tuesdays and Thursdays in addition, which would have driven up our days of, and where that shooting was happening are the areas that are a little bit more audible to some of our neighbors. And therefore I could see the concern from that, but we've since reverted back to our, and it's noted in Appendix A in the bylaw. We've reverted back to our pre-COVID shooting days.
I think for time, I'll leave it to my other colleagues. I appreciate both of you coming here, and I think it's important that, you know, when we go through this process, that you're able to share your perspective, because honestly, like, I've driven by that facility lots of times and really didn't have a good appreciation for what goes on there. Realized that the neighbor, it's a member of the club. So, you know, I think for us going through this, it's finding the right balance between, you know, bylaw, but also allowing you to continue operations. That's a tricky place to get to, but I appreciate your candidness.
All right, thank you.
Councilor Goyette?
Yeah, thanks. I will echo Councilor Hurst's comments. Thank you for coming here today. Thank you for sharing information, the history of the club, some information that we do. And thank you also for providing sort of some written documentation ahead of time. I myself have been sort of trying to gain a better understanding of the club itself, sport shooting in general, and I found the information you provided actually quite helpful. So thank you for doing that. And I agree as well with councilors. I think, you know, I'm glad you're here. I think it's important that everyone's at the table and that as we go through this process, we are gathering all of the necessary information to hopefully have a better outcome and hopefully really strike some kind of balance. I do have a question, and maybe it's a bit more a clarification. I guess maybe just to frame my question, when the agenda first came out and I read the proposed bylaw, maybe naively so, I thought upon my first reading that it was reasonably permissive. As far as I could tell, the hours of operation that are in here are an exact duplicate of what is currently in place at the club. The sound level that is being proposed is, I think, much higher than if it was a new club, but also your sound engineer mentions in your report that the sound engineer does think it's achievable. It still is allowing for numerous special events. It's allowing for a grace period of 2 years. I thought, you know, again, when I read all these things, to me, I'm thinking, well, I think we're on a pretty good track here. But then I'm sure you're aware, council has received many letters from members of the club leading up to today. And one of the comments that it seems to be a sort of a templated letter, it's the same letter, slightly different worded, but it speaks to members of the club have been informed of the significant impacts of this bylaw, which are so severe that they will threaten the club's existence. And so I was surprised to read that what's here is being considered so severe. And so I'm trying to kind of reconcile that, like, what are the specific components of this bylaw that are, you know, being perhaps perceived as punitive, because I think it's important to know those things as we have this discussion. And I'm hearing today, maybe it's the licensing component, but I'm just looking for a little bit of clarification as to where there's maybe a disconnect in terms of what's being proposed here today. And, you know, maybe what about that is being perceived as so severe and so punitive.
Take home. It's a good question. I'm unaware of the letters and what they may have said, so I can't really comment to those, but our biggest concern, I would say, is with the approach to a licensing bylaw. And I guess right now, we're still in the understanding and learning phase. So we still, one of the things that I've requested is to, you know, engage with you more to understand some of these details a little bit better. That might clarify some of our concerns. But our concern around the licensing aspect of it is if licensing can change without the involvement of council or the public, without our knowing about it. And but again, this goes back to, I think we have to have some more internal discussions so that we can better understand maybe where we're at and work together on a fair and bylaw for everybody.
That's fair. I mean, it's a learning.
Yeah, we're
learning
still new in the
opportunity for
game.
Everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Part of the concern too, I've heard from members, is the, some of the fines of, you know, not less than 500, but up to 50,000 for the first offense and up to 100,000 or not more than 100,000 for subsequent or second offense. And those sorts of things are concerning, certainly with sound. And we've learned a lot about sound and sound measurement, and concerns like if the wind is really strong from one direction, or if it's in the winter when the foliage is off the trees and the wind is in a bad, we get a perfect storm as far as elements that lead to us being temporarily or over that 70 decibel limit, that the penalties are quite severe, and those sorts of fines could financially sink the club in a hurry if through no fault of members, with them doing things that they believe that they're permitted to do. And so that's a real concern as well. Those seem pretty heavy-handed for a not-for-profit corporation. Fines of those natures can put us in peril in a hurry. And that, like I say, that's a concern.
Okay, that's good. That's helpful to know. That's good feedback. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Let's ask several questions. First, it relates to your clay target range. When did that come to be with you roughly?
I would have to get back to you on the exact year for our clay target range, but that was, to the best of my understanding, one of the founding ranges that we've had there.
Would have been in the 50s.
Yeah.
In the 50s. Okay. Your comment about the noise bylaw. We had a similar question. I had a similar question raised from some of the residents who are concerned about the noise. The County of Wellington put forward a noise bylaw, which all the municipalities adopted, and it had nothing in there about gunshots, rifle shots. So there is nothing available to control shooting. So that's one of the reasons why we took this approach here, to try to address this concern. Nobody's going to change the bylaw because it's a universal bylaw across the entire county, and the police have one set of standards to enforce, and they go in and enforce their bylaw everywhere in the county. So there is no avenue to approach it from the noise bylaw. So this is the only avenue we have, and it's very similar to what Township of Uxbridge and the Township of Clarendon have done. So there's nothing special there. The other issue you mentioned was this bylaw, proposed bylaw doesn't conform with the provincial guidelines. Well, prior to the NPC 300, which regulates the sound levels, there was a sound levels for station sources and class 3 areas rule. And that basically said the sound level limit or point of reception within 30 meters of dwelling was 70 dBAI. The gun club was operating prior to 1990. our bylaw is not contradicting that. The second point is the provincial document NPC 300. They have a table before, and depending on the levels of type of property, the requirements there are considerably less than what we're proposing in the bylaw. So I find it difficult when you make a comment that why don't we follow the provincial guidelines? Well, if you want us to, we'll go enact the NPC 300. We'll talk about 60 to 55. So I would be very cautious on spreading statements that aren't true. The issue with the 2-year moratorium, is there anything you can be done to alleviate some of the noise in the interim while you're installing these berms? Things I'm talking about is I'm not a gun enthusiast, so I know very little. So I did some quick research on the net, understand the shells are low noise. Is there a possibility to use low noise shells? Is there an opportunity to use less powerful guns? I don't know too much about it, so I'm asking you as the expert in this area.
Okay, I'd like to maybe first address the,
No. Sorry, Matt, he didn't pose a question with that first component of his statement.
Understood.
So he's allowed to state that to you.
Yeah.
And you'll have to focus your response on the mitigation of the noise.
My apologies.
No worries.
There's something about the shotgun shells we are looking at right now. We've been doing some testing recently to measure what's called the DRAM, which basically references the amount of powder and the velocity, and therefore a higher velocity shell or projectile coming out would have a higher pressure, therefore a larger sound report. So we are looking at doing that.
Okay, that's good. So any idea on the time frame of that, implementing something like that? I'm hoping you can do something that very short order, because within the 2-year moratorium, the residents are going to be very impatient with nothing happening during this course of 2 years.
Yeah, that's something that we're still working on. We have done some recent testing with some noise curtains that we've installed at one of the ranges, and they did have a decent impact. So we're looking at the financial cost to potentially put them in other areas right now as well.
And lastly, with respect to berming, you're saying you got a lot of work to be done. Are you expecting to get all the berming in place within the 2 years?
We should be able to.
Okay. And I was wondering, there was a question of the CEO, is there an issue with respect to regulations or anything like that from the GRC? I've heard there were concerns at one time. Is there something that we can do as council to discuss this with the GRCA to look at means of letting something like this happen, or a facsimile of that happening without affecting the wetlands?
So through Mr. Chair, staff have been in contact with the GRCA around the review of the proposed berming work. They're open to reviewing it. I think that's in progress right now. So from the township's perspective, we're working through that staff with the GRCA. If there's any concerns that come up around, I think it's the one area on the property that does encroach into the wetlands, if that does become a concern, the GRCA has their permitting process and the township does as well. And I feel we can work through that. There may also need to be other remedies put in place for a specific area if encroachment into the wetlands are not permitted.
Good, thank you.
Maybe I can add, I will come to you, Councilor Bailey. I don't believe the intent is to encroach into the wetland, it's to encroach into the setback to the wetland. So just for the people on YouTube, we're not talking about filling in a wetland, it's the either 30-meter setback that is problematic on a component of the berm.
So I just want to have one concluding comment. I appreciate all the good things that the club does for charity and all that, and it's not our intention to make the club go away. The residents and you have to coexist, and what we're trying to do is find a solution that works for both parties. I'm sure, but when we come to it, they're not going to be happy, you're not going to be happy. But at least it'll be something that's workable.
We respect that.
Councilor Bailey, hold on. Do you have any disclosure of pecuniary interest today?
No.
Excellent. No, go ahead.
No, I don't want to repeat, I don't want to ask a question if it's already been
That's fine.
talked about in the thing. My one question I just wanted clarification on is the proposed hours of operation. Has that been done in collaboration with the club and staff? Has that?
So through you, Mr. Chair, if that question's to me, there was collaboration with the club, getting information about what their existing schedule is. So what is seen in the bylaw is what we understand as staff to be the existing operations. And then, of course, there is the proposed interim schedule, which staff drafted to sort of give some reprieve during certain times while the club comes into compliance with the bylaw.
So there was a little bit of
Yes,
collaboration with that. Okay, that's all I have right now. Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Spinoza's statements that, you know, we were trying to find the happy median, and maybe happy is not the best adjective, but the median between the club. We're not trying or intend to put the club into insolvency. You know, and one of the things I hear, whether it's in the emails or personally, is, well, these people bought near a gun club and they just moved in, or people, you know, they've encroached, your statement was they've encroached on the gun club. If you look at the agenda, 55% of the respondents on that survey had been there over 20 years. So, and if you broke that down further, there were some that were 25 years. So I think the argument that, or the statement that they bought near it is an archaic one. And my rebuttal to that, I'm at my day job and I'm getting attacked on this, okay? So I'm taking flack on all fronts. And I said, if you bought near a bottle of water, you can accept the bottle of water. But if you now have a case of bottles, that's different. And that's not what they bought into. So what we're trying to do is find some ground where the club stays relatively to what they're used to experiencing. And I think what COVID did was, through that situation, is it, you know, we ramped up, it became a concern. So the licensing component will, and my understanding is that if there's a licensing component, if you need changes to make your club continue to operate in 20 years, you can come and delegate, you can approach the township and say, hey, listen, we're gonna go insolvent if we don't change X, Y, and Z. And we'll have those discussions because we don't want to see that. But I also don't, I probably shouldn't say this, but you know, when I'm getting emails from people from Tame Center, Mississauga, that don't do this to our club, I like to come shoot there. Why should our residents have to put up with people loading their gun in their car, come here and ratchet off a box of shells and have all those nuisances? I liked it when I didn't receive those emails, and I could be a little naive on who. So when they were all residents or mostly from out of town, I'm getting on my soapbox right now, but you know, why should the rural community be a subsidy on every aspect in our society to the urban centers? So that's very problematic to me. So, and the cut and paste emails, they don't do it. Like, it needs to be personalized, because again, there was some, I thought maybe you were spearheading these, this generic letter coming out. I don't know who it was. But it doesn't carry weight because it's just cut and paste. I don't even know if they knew what was in the body. If it had identified the concerns that the counselor was asking for, like, hey, we were concerned with the licensing, we're going to do it. Well, you know, we have something that we can ask staff and we can go forward. But to me, it just seems like not an NIMBY, but you know, just change, and they're just scared of the change. But we've had great collaboration up to this point, and I expect it's going to continue to work well going forward. We have to work with the residents, we have to work with you. And Ms. White Fox incorporated many components of your already existing schedule and things of that nature. So I don't think it's a doomsday. Is there tweaks to this bylaw? Absolutely. So I think it's a good first step, and that's why we have drafts, and we'll receive that feedback. And I just want you to know that we're still willing to work with both parties. And I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
You got it.
Lastly, you did mention that some cost of mitigation was going to mention a number of $1 million or a couple of million. I forget the number. I don't want the words in your mouth. But were you referring to the berms? Is that what no, you were not. No, also the berms are not going to be this component that could jeopardize the club entirely. It's to everything holistically, or what was that statement around?
That's, we've looked, recently, we've had a company that came in or look at installing sound walls. And these sound walls are very cost prohibitive. And that's where the million and a half dollars comes from. And that's kind of depending if we can get approval to put in the berm work. And there very well maybe have to be a happy median or a share between sound walls and berms, depending on what areas. And it just, I guess that relationship is the potential concern. But again, it goes back to working further with you guys to understand some of or the rest of the bylaw.
And I may have made the statement that the berm in the setback, and it's my understanding that the proposed berm hasn't been approved. A majority of it is outside of that setback in generic terms, we could say should be able to be approved. It's just a component of it that's within the setback that, and Councilor Spillis, we reached out to the GRCA. There was some remediation to some of their property that GRCA was dealing with the gun club, and there was some conversations around that the berm could not advance until that other component was remediated. Staff, myself, reached out to GRCA and asked if they could do the two in parallel, recognizing that they would not receive permission on the berms until the first component was resolved. And GRCA was supportive of that. Now there was some miscommunication there, but the first issue is resolved as far as my understanding. So everybody's on board here. We're working towards it. Do we know if they're going to be able to encroach on that setback yet or not? We don't know, but ideally the most economical is a berm across the entire thing, but it may be a hybrid, as you state. And we'll continue to assist you working with GRCA. They're a good organization to work with, and I think that's all I have. So I appreciate your time. Apologize for not referencing you as doctor the first time I asked you to come down. And do you have a resolution?
Yes, we have to receive for information.
Can I move for that, please? Mrs. Spillis, Councilor Russell, Russell, all in favor? Carried. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for your time.
All right, we're only 30 minutes behind schedule. I'll ask our next delegate to come down. That's Philip Odell and Pamela Odell, please.
Good morning, Your Worship, Council.
Thank you for taking time out of your day to come today.
Let's hope I'm on a blood pressure monitor for my doctor, so this is going to look spectacular in the results.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting us. We are one of the half a dozen actual neighbors of the club. So interesting first point, we've never been contacted about this until we got here, and I've reached out and have been kept up to date by Brenda in the front office. So thanks to Brenda for updating. I missed apparently the first meeting that dealt with this. So kudos to council for keeping us up to date on that. Like I said, we are one of the 6 neighbors. I think it's 6 or 7 if you go through it, that is a direct neighbor to the club. I'd like to make one comment, and the mayor and I have had discussions of this on a completely separate thing. The bylaw going to a licensing versus a regulatory model may well bring the township into conflict with existing laws at higher levels. We deal with, and I, in my other businesses, deal with the CFO of Ontario. And they work to very, very strict rules and regulations, and coming into conflict could be problematic to the township as well as the county. I will say that in a regulatory zoning situation, the CFO always, it's one of the very first questions we get. Are you in compliance with all regulatory and zoning applications that apply to your business? Yes. And I have to certify that. So going to, again, a zoning regulatory model fits perfectly into how the CFO regulates ranges, gun clubs, businesses, etc., and doesn't bring you into the potential situation of having a conflicting legal framework at 2 levels, which is one of the things that could, again, cost people like the club and other businesses significantly. Because how do you fight that out when 2 governments are fighting it out and they're fighting it with your money? Becomes a different situation. Okay, what I'd like to say, and what the reason Pam and I came here is because I'd like to say we moved in there in 2003. We've been neighbors of the club since 2003, and the club is our best neighbor. They are a phenomenal organization. They do incredible work. They outreach the community. They do everything they can in supporting charitable groups. As a recreational facility, they're fantastic. We back right onto them. We share. I'd have to check the exact, it's over 400 meters of boundary with the club. Our boundary is on the range area. So we are right in the area where the noise is. It's never been a problem to us. When my parents were alive, they loved sitting out on the porch and they would hear the club operating. It's like, oh, yeah, the boys are out again. Great. It was a wonderful time. We have had excellent contacts with the club. When the club delegation was referring to the World Championships, they actually outreached us as a neighbor and said, we want to do this. And this is what it is. Is there any questions, concerns, anything that we can answer for you? They were very proactive in dealing with us as neighbors. They've been continuously proactive in dealing with us as neighbors. I'd like to thank the mayor and Councillor Sopolis for your acknowledgement of my note. The club has done everything they can in the same way to, when there's an event, to let us know. And we cannot say enough about the people that are there. We've never had problems with any of the folks there. I can't say that about my other neighbors. I've found tree stands, I've found people, I've found garbage, I've found camping material that shows up on my property that comes in from other properties. I can't say that about the club. The boundary we share with the club is mint, it's well looked after. They maintain the fence, their signs. It's a pleasure to have the club as our neighbor. And I can't speak highly enough about what they do, both as a recreational organization and as a fantastic representative of Puss Lynch out to the world, because they bring a lot of people in here. I have friends from the Caribbean who have come here to participate in events at the club. And they're world-class, in one case, an Olympic shooter, that have come here to participate in events at the club. The club is extremely well-known and it is a gem of the township. And to see it shut down, altered, otherwise have problems continuing would be very, very disturbing and upsetting to me as a resident. I enjoy the club. I enjoy what it brings to us, and I think it sincerely adds to the flavor of Puss Lynch, and it's one of the reasons why I moved here. I will also say, when we moved here, one of the things that our real estate agent, like Murray Harnick, some people may know Murray, he did a lot of real estate around here. One of the first things he said is, by the way, there's a range back there. Like, okay, is that a problem? He goes, no, but you need to know there's a range back there. And I think any responsible real estate agent, when someone was moving in, that would definitely be one of the things you would mention. And I strongly suspect it was, because it's not something you can hide. In terms of the noise levels, there's no problem with the noise levels from our perspective. It's fine. The days of the week, it's fine. I've always found that without having to be regulated into the nth degree, the club has always taken a responsible attitude. They don't shoot on Christmas. They don't shoot on Good Friday. They don't shoot after dark, except I think Wednesdays they shoot under the lights. It's always been a very, very cooperative situation that we've had, and I have no problem with the club's activities. You got anything?
I just had a couple of questions. This bylaw is strictly for the gun club, the noise.
Oh,
It's strictly from, I'm just asking, that's true? Okay, so,
Just one second. It's a site-specific bylaw.
So through you,
So that
Mr.
makes
Chair, it's for shooting ranges in the township of Puss Lynch. That's different from the discharge of firearms bylaw, which would apply to every property.
That's, okay, I just want to clarify that. I think that, the cooperation between council and the club, I think that's so important. And I think that unless we get to know our neighbors and understand why they're upset and understand why there are these concerns, then we're never going to be able to work together to figure something out. So I really applaud this process. And I think that a lot of the people who are in the country that came to the country, it's one of those things you don't even hear it because you just expect it. You're in the country. It's the same with smell. I expect that several times a year, I'm gonna get, somebody's gonna lay down liquid fertilizer and I'm gonna get it's just part of living in the township. I think it's, so I guess for me, I have a harder time understanding the concerns for the noise, because again, I don't even hear them. And they're only going on at certain times, but the 70 decibel level, I was just wondering if that from the club, again, from the club's perspective, they're saying that that is probably doable, but I guess my concern again with them is what happens if the perfect storm does occur and it does go over, and now they're going to be like, is there room in the bylaw for, instead of, if it does happen and it is not the norm and they've put everything in place, but it does happen, does that automatically trigger this big fine, or is there going to be room for understanding? I guess that's the other question.
I think a big part of our discussion is the enforcement of the bylaw. What's that going to look like? What's the expectation from the residents? What's the expectation from the municipality? So that will transpire once we look at the bylaw. We'll likely be given staff direction to look at that component and report back.
Okay.
I know I have some concerns. We don't have 24/7 bylaw, so is the resident expectation that they call on a Saturday at 2 o'clock, there's gonna be an officer there at 2:10?
Right.
So we need to work these out from both perspectives, what the municipality can provide and what it cannot.
Okay.
So it's a valid concern.
How can we be kept apprised of progress on this?
I think it's on the agenda, but
So through you, Mr. Chair, we did do the public engagement where you would have received the survey to your house. From there, what I would recommend, because we likely won't be doing any more direct mail, is to subscribe to our webpage that will give you alerts when agendas come out, and then you'll be able to look to see if it's on there. That's the best way to stay informed.
Yes, I do that, and somehow I missed the May meeting.
was maybe need a delegation from.
Yes.
It was.
So that might not necessarily trigger a notification because we don't notify everybody when delegates submit, and they sometimes submit. What's the deadline for delegation
Yeah.
for Tuesday or something?
So through you, Mr. Chair, you have to go into the agenda package and look
I
at
do.
the, yeah, and so then you would notice if you scroll through, whatever's listed there. So the delegation was listed under section 7 of the agenda. So delegations are separate from reports. There may not be actual materials on the agenda other than the request to delegate.
But also the notification component, if say next meeting, whatever the date is, if an individual from the community decides they want to delegate now, that's not going to trigger a notification through that website, is it?
Yes, so through you, Mr. Chair, it will.
There you
We post, when we add something after an agenda has been published, which is allowed through our procedural bylaw, it triggers an addendum agenda, which will also send you an email.
Okay.
Just let you know.
Yeah, they're not always clear as to what they're delegating on.
That is what she's saying, you'll have to go into the.
Right, I did.
It would have been listed in respect to the gun club. Like I recall the agenda item, but we can go back and look, but
Okay,
if you have
well
any
then-
questions, please.
Because I found this one.
Free to reach out.
This one was fine. I picked this up right away. So, okay, I just would like, if there's any email list or contacts for people who are interested in the issue, please add us to that. So,
I need some clarity from you, and I apologize if I'm not understanding what you're saying. But you were mentioning that chief firearms officer asked about whether they're in compliance with zoning and that's, sounds very critical to the club
It
getting their
is.
certifications. But so were you advocating for the licensing component or were you advocating for the noise bylaw component or neither? Like I wasn't quite sure where you were landing with that.
It's a comment on a licensing model versus a regulatory zoning model for your bylaw. If you work in the regulatory zoning model, you're not ever going to be in conflict with a licensing model that already exists from the province and the federal government, which relates to ranges and businesses.
Okay, I understand what you're saying now, but
Okay, and there's actually two of those because there's also the explosives group that may relate to certain members of the county not in Puslinch. But there are federal regulatory matters that come down on businesses, which fall through the chief firearms office.
so we need to ensure that if we're doing a licensing component, one of the conditions is that they're licensed through those two organizations that he's mentioned, because it'd be a very awkward position to have a licensed gun club that doesn't have a license from the chief firearms officer in Ontario.
In fact, having that license probably is what you need to have, because they will come back to the local municipality and make sure that they follow all the requirements that you people have. Again, under a zoning regulatory. So if there's a noise bylaw, anything like that, they would ensure that happens.
Okay.
So through Mr. Chair, what we do in our bylaws, because again, our being a local lower tier, we have to interface with provincial and federal regulations. That's where provincial legislation is where we get our authority to actually create our regulatory bylaws. So we interface with that legislation through every regulatory bylaw, whether it's licensing, zoning, all of that. So that's something that we do with all bylaws, which you'll see sort of in the preamble of a bylaw. You'll see where we're getting the authority to actually make the bylaw. What we also ensure to do is we put a conflict provision in bylaws, where if there's any conflict between a provision of a bylaw and any other legislation that governs the use or whatever the bylaw is supposed to do, whatever has the higher standard applies. Likewise, we always include a provision that says you have to comply with all other laws. So if there's federal, provincial, whatever laws also apply to what we're seeking to regulate, there's a section of the bylaw that says you must also comply with that. So our regulatory authority and our licensing comes from the municipal act, and we are within our ability to enact those laws in addition to what is already being regulated for the use by other levels of government.
All right, I will open up to council. Council, is it Councilor Hurst first? Yeah, it's still first, even though Councilor Bailey's here now.
Yep.
Okay, Councilor Hurst.
So hopefully, thank you for that. Hopefully the blood pressure wasn't wired right up, but
In about 3 minutes, I'll tell you again.
so maybe just like some comments and a question. I think the reality is we live in a rural municipality. I can give you the exact same example of manure. Like we live in a rural community, right? And so with that comes the understanding that certain things take place and activities take place, and that's what makes this township great. There's a lot of diversity too. I would say I very much appreciate your delegation. I certainly put weight into your physical location in regards to the gun club. I think that's quite important from my perspective as a longtime resident too. And I think that's really important. And I was glad to hear the level of communication that the gun club's taken directly with you, because I think that's something that I think is valuable, and I maybe wasn't fully aware just through this isn't negative to the gun club's delegation, but just understanding that degree of communication that takes place within that, I'll say adjacent community neighborhood type of thing. So I think I certainly learned something from that. So very much appreciative. Yeah, I'll maybe leave the regulatory piece to the CEO that spoke to that, because I think that's a murky world at best. I guess the one question, are you a member of either of you a member of the gun club as well as being an adjacent?
Yeah, we have a family membership. The club, and I mentioned this in my note, the club has offered us a complimentary membership as a neighbor, and we have declined the complimentary membership, and we have acted to be full members and paying members. because of the work they do. I think it's appropriate, and for the fee, even though I'm not an active member, I'm very happy to support what they do, and certainly their outreach, and especially the safety aspect and the training that they offer to young people. I think that's very well worth my money.
Well, that's good. I appreciate that.
No problem.
No, this has been a very insightful delegation from my perspective, so thank you for taking the time to come here today. I know
Thanks
this
for
is
allowing us
an
the time.
easy thing to do and sit in front of
No.
everyone. So thank you.
Councilor Brennan?
Yeah, thanks. I echo Councillor Hurst's comments. It's definitely helpful for us to hear council from residents of the township, from the township, and specifically in your case, a direct adjacent neighbor to the club. So that does bear a lot of weight as we deliberate and consider things.
Sorry.
That's the pressure.
Cross-examined by Councillor Bailey. Yes. Avoid it. Sorry.
I do, and also thank you for the email that you sent in advance. That also was helpful. I do want to just clarify one item that you had written in the email, and you had asked about Mondays and the punitive daily hours being proposed, and specifically why we're taking Mondays off. And I just wasn't really understanding where that came from. Is that in specific to skeet shooting? Clay targets?
Yeah, I mean, it's, as the mayor mentioned, the bottle of water issue. Monday's not considered a problem. When you look at apparently it's high, it's going off again. When you look at the responses, the days that were not considered an issue were struck off as activities. So in my view, I see that as whatever level of activity, and I don't believe anyone is proposing to ramp up the level of activity. If the level of activity that's existing is okay, why are we cutting out that small level of activity that may be there?
And I agree. My understanding is we haven't cut out any hours. The hours that are being proposed are what the existing hours of the club are. I'm just trying to,
I think
again, make some
Yeah,
connection.
I mean, there are events, Mondays in particular, because of long weekends. There are times when the club would be active on a Monday for something, but we have 8 or 9 statutory holidays. Not all of them are Mondays. 2 of them are specifically prohibited by the club already. But there's events that happen, and sometimes they would go over to, and the reason I pick a Monday is because it's a holiday Monday. It happens sometimes. And is there a reason why all of a sudden it would go from it's not a problem to no, you can't do it at all? And when you're reviewing the hours and you're reviewing these things, that was my concern. You know, if it's not currently a problem, why are we putting the hammer on it? Thank you.
Yes, Phil. Question for you with respect to your point of reference when you're sitting on your porch and hearing these gunshots. I want to be fair to the residents who are complaining. Between you and the club and the shooting range, what's in between and how far away are you?
The one porch, that house is set further back 500 meters to the corner. It's a very erratic border. Our back boundary is the south floodplain of Mill Creek.
Yep.
So our back boundaries are
I'm just
erratic.
looking at it
I'm
from the
just trying to
shooting
think.
range to your property, to where you hear the noise. I was sitting on the back porch, like how far would that be?
Maybe 500 meters to the
Okay,
one
and
range.
what's in between? Is it flat land? Is it,
There would be a mix of trees and fields. And yes, and certain amount of swamp because Mill Creek crosses, we
it's called
share the
wetland.
boundary. Provincially significant wetland, in fact, yes.
All right, that's all I had. Thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate your delegation. Oh, sorry, you're back. Sorry, Councilor Bailey.
Thanks. Thank you for
Yes.
coming. Just, I wanted to get confirmation. Did you receive the letter in the mail for the survey?
Yes, we got the survey. Everyone, all of our residents completed the survey.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure. I thought I'd heard you say you hadn't received it, so I just want to make sure you.
Yeah,
have.
that was the first communication we had on this.
Okay, so you're on the mail out. Yeah, thanks for coming. I think a lot of the times when we're having to create a bylaw, it is in fact because there's not a lot of communication between neighbors. Or neighbors have discrepancies and then they come to the municipality, say, look, we need you to come up with
They need a referee.
we need a mom. Yeah, we need mom to step in and kind of figure it out. So I appreciate hearing the communication, you know, that you've had with the gun club.
Mhm. They've been very good.
And I think we're here today to create the bylaw just so we can have kind of this collaboration, try to come up with a balanced approach to rural living, to a rural business, to rural neighbors, and figure out how we can kind of come up with something that's, you know, works for everyone involved. You had mentioned that there was no activity on Good Fridays.
Yep.
And I don't believe I saw that in any of our, can we just make note of Good Friday as well for future discussion? And I think that's all. I don't really have any other questions, but I appreciate you coming today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Really appreciate you coming in. It's always good to hear both sides of the argument, you know, support and, you know, concerns. I'm concerned that the perception of altered, because in the draft of the bylaw, the schedule was provided by the club. You know, all these components were provided by the club. Yes, they requested 15 special event days. The proposal's 12. It's a slight reduction with a total number of days. It's very supportive. Now, so I think we have to differentiate the conversation between the bylaw and the interim component when they're building the mitigation, because that one definitely. Now, where we land on that one is going to be up for debate, but I do believe it's appropriate to have some sort of component in there to ensure that compliance is achieved within a prescribed amount of time.
You don't want another aggregate bylaw situation.
Unfortunately, the township's been burnt on, and no disrespect to the club whatsoever, but we are working in an environment now that we have to look at worst case scenarios, anticipate every possible outcome, because it's just been so challenging. But I don't see it. I don't think it's going to be something that we can't come to an agreement on with the club and with the residents. It might not be what we have proposed today, but so that rhetoric out there that we're altering, it's not that. Other than that window of getting into compliance with berms, and they may be able to work through the GRCA permitting process quite rapidly, and it's a non-issue, right? So
We've certainly had
Moving
excellent
parts,
support from GRCA in our project.
the other statement was the understanding of rural life. We have a new demographic of people coming into our community. My perception is they sell their property in the GTA for mega bucks and they move to the country. So they didn't grow up in the country. They're not used to like I saw a post on one of these social media sites, somebody complained about the manure. And to me, I'm like, holy cow, but I've also been to a situation where I went to a call, it was a skunk. They didn't know what a skunk was, right? So it's not people don't have a true understanding of rural living. And that's just the reality. We've had complaints about a resident riding their dirt bike on their own agricultural property. They're not used to these things. Again, and it's not a culture thing. It's just where.
How do we get to keep them?
Well, that's a good question. I don't feel that there's a true understanding of what rural life is. And it goes so deep. It goes as much as garbage collection is different. Your internet's different. Now we're getting better with the internet because the fiber is going in the ground everywhere. But prior to that, they're moving to the country and saying, I can't get cell service. They don't know. So there is an education component about what rural living is.
The club actually helped us by putting a cell tower.
So those days are gone, that people actually know what to expect when they move out to the country. So, and I'm not saying that's right or wrong. It's just something that we deal with on almost a daily basis, right? So it's a tough thing to manage, but and I'll leave it at that. Thanks for the presentation. I would like you to, if we're making notes of special days. I saw the prohibition of Father's Day in the proposed bylaw as a prohibition. I think without getting myself in trouble, we'll look at that one. I'd like to have a discussion about that when we look at the bylaw.
I would definitely agree with you on that.
So I'm trying to figure out my words in my head before I say it, so. Anyways, thanks again.
Thank you.
We'll carry on.
Thank you. Council, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
All right. Oh, yes, we'll see down for information. Can we move for that, please? Councilor Goyda, Councilor Bailey, all in favor? It's carried.
I hope we'd be quicker, sorry.
Oh, no, worries. No, it's my fault. I talked too much. And our next one is Olinda Da Silva and, oh, is it just Olinda? Wasn't sure yet. Back?
Still just nervous.
Oh, I know, it takes a while, it's fine, I try to make it light as best I can, because I remember sitting over there at one point, it's nerve wracking, but just remember we're just people as well. So you can start whenever you're ready.
I'm gonna stick to my speaking notes so that I don't lose track. Most of it is, it's very large, you can almost read it from there, but so, first of all, good morning, Mayor, Council, staff, and members of the public. My name is Olinda Da Silva, and I'm a resident of Pushlands, and our family has resided on Gore Road since 2007. I'm here to speak in regards to the proposed shooting range bylaw draft. I'd like to acknowledge and thank the staff for all the hard work that has been put into this first draft. I know it is not easy, but a necessary measure. I would also like to note that the change in the Galt Sportsman's Club Board of Directors and the more open and willingness to engage with the surrounding neighbors has been a positive step in the right direction, and it was long overdue. I appreciate that. I will touch on a few of the most relevant points in the bylaw that I feel need to be addressed or clarified, not today necessarily here, but in future conversations. First, the noise decibel level prescribed is over provincial regulations, and at these levels, they will still be clearly audible inside our homes, continuing to violate our rights to reasonable enjoyment of our properties. The hours of operation, 362 days a year, from 9 in the morning until 8 p.m. or dusk, with the longer days in spring, summer, and early fall. The shooting, will be extended until well past or 8 or 9 o'clock. This year's average July sunset was 9:04. Clear hours of operation need to be set. The only excluded days are Mother's Day, Father's Day, and Christmas. There are many more federal and provincial statutory holidays that need to be addressed. Closed 3 days a year is in no way a balance between the club and the residents. The fact that shooting is allowed every weekend is something that must be addressed. Residents are paying taxes to this municipality, and they shouldn't have to schedule their family lunches or gatherings only after 5 p.m. due to the barrage of gunshots from 9 to 5 every weekend. Moving on to special events. The wording in special event section states outside the normal operating schedule. The existing shooting range holds many special events during the weekend within the proposed operating schedule. Can there be some clarification on requests for extension of hours? Does that imply that they can request to shoot until 10 or 11 o'clock at night or start as early as 6 in the morning on those weekends? Or will there be stipulations on the exemption of hours implemented? In regards to the number of special events, they can add 15 extra days on top of the shooting every Saturday and Sunday. If requests for Fridays and Mondays are granted, this opens up the door to have most long weekends opened up to all areas of the club. In this case, this leaves residents with very few, if any, long weekends to enjoy their property. Applications for exemptions to the decibel level is stated, but not how many can be granted. Section 5.2B, notification to property owners within 120 meters of the shooting range. is that 120 meters from their property line or from the actual shooting point where the shooting is occurring to my property line or other residences' property lines? Once an application has been approved, how often will it be required and to be renewed with the proper noise study submitted to the township? Will there be a requirement for setbacks from neighboring properties for licensing? Now, as far as enforcement, I understand that you're all still working on the enforcement portion of the bylaw, and to me, that is the point that needs to be clearly addressed for future drafts. I couldn't find where in the licensing portion of it, can it be revoked for continued violations within section 9.2 of the penalties? Is that going to be included eventually? Now, also clarification in the difference in wording of person, owner, property. In some sections, it states person, other areas it states owner or property. Can you please clarify if a member violates the bylaw, will that be considered a club violation? Now, within, so the existing range on Gore Road, as most of us know, were local members that started in another municipality as a social group to cite their guns pre-hunting seasons. They then moved to 100 acres in Bushlands in the 60s. They acquired an additional 150 acres sometime in the 90s. How did 250 acres of agricultural and environmentally sensitive lands become site-specific zoned to allow a shooting range with no notification to neighbors or any public consultations at that time? I have tried to garner information on the additional 150 acres from the township, but there doesn't appear to be any. It may be something that I haven't gotten the information yet, but it is something I think the residents deserve an explanation to. The Galt Sportsman's Club change in business model, especially over the last number of years, going from a 2-day operation to 24 hours, 365 days a year, along with the increase in its membership, has caused much anxiety and stress and forced our family to change how we utilize our property. We schedule our family weekend lunches later in the afternoon so we don't have to tolerate the noise for hours on end. I can't read a book outside or just sit and enjoy the sound of nature until after 5 p.m. on weekends or well into the evening the other nights. I wake up most weekends looking at the clock to see how long I have left to go before 9 in the morning and how much time I have left to enjoy my coffee before the shots start ringing out. I drive past my driveway on Wednesdays, coming home from work sometimes because I can hear the shots from the road and the stress level begins to rise, knowing I'll be forced to hear that until 8 p.m. It used to be until past 10 o'clock in recent years, but they have cut back. We have to close our windows in the summer if we want to get some relief from the noise. We shouldn't have to modify how we live and go about our daily routine based on the noise being emitted from a shooting range. I realize that this is a first draft and much more fine tuning is going to be required and a lot of collaboration between the township, the residents, and the existing gun range. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Linda. Appreciate you coming today. Welcome to the council. Councilor Hurst.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Silva. I appreciate you sharing your comments. You spoke quite articulate on kind of the experiences you've had. I really don't have any questions. I think this has been good information to take into consideration, and I very much share your comments in the sense of, you know, this is a first draft of a potential bylaw, and you know, lots of conversations still need to take place, and you know, I think I certainly appreciate you sharing comments. I think I take them quite seriously, and yeah, I think that's all I really have.
Let's go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I am happy to hear your opening comment saying that there's been a noticeable improvement in the communication with the club and the collaboration. So that I'm glad to hear that, and thank you for sharing that. you've asked a lot of really great questions that I'm not sure any of us necessarily have the answer to today, but it's helpful feedback for us as we go through the draft and have discussions on it. So I do appreciate you coming and sharing your feedback on this first draft.
Mr. Spose?
Yes, a couple of questions. First of all, thank you for coming in. You made a comment that the 70 dBA doesn't conform with provincial regulations. What provincial regulation is it? Because I'm not aware of any provincial regulation in play that governs noise from shooting or impulse noises.
NPC 300,
That is not a regulation, that's a guideline.
a guideline. I stand corrected. Apologize.
The other point is, how far away are you roughly from the shooting range? We had a previous deputy said he was about half a meter, and I think Councilor Gordon, half a kilometer, Councilor Gordon, I think, to the search and found more closer to a kilometer, but how far away are you?
343 meters took place, just
From your property line or from your house?
from our backyard, just where we listen, like, you know, where we're outside, just
And
walking
what's in
around.
between you and them?
There is a laneway and there's trees. Along the laneway, there are trees.
Cedar trees.
Okay, on the other side of the laneway, is there sort of trees? Is there any forest or is there?
No,
wide
no,
open?
there's a pond and there's a hill, then a parking lot, then there's the place. And we are about 400 meters to the handgun range, and there's a lot of trees, and then they go down the valley, and about 835 meters from the rifle range, and there's quite a number of trees between us and the rifle range.
Okay, in terms of the activity that's causing you most concern, is it the skeet shooting, the clay shooting, or could you tell?
I'm not, I'm not very well versed
Yeah, neither am I.
in guns. For us, the rifle range is the furthest, so I hear it, but it's not as intrusive. I'm assuming that it's the clays or the skeet shooting. I know the handgun area, like I said in the last time, wasn't a big issue, but we can hear everything now. Like it seems to have become louder. Now, for whatever reason, is it stronger guns? Is that less trees? Is it more members? It has changed. So I don't know, unless somebody was shooting and say, okay, we're shooting right here, this is what I'm hearing. I don't know if it's the clays or the skeet and trap.
All right, that's fine. Thank you very much for coming.
Mr. Bailey?
Thanks, Linda, for coming again. I don't have any questions for you, but I've tried to make notes of all your, your questions, things you've noticed in the draft. And these are things that are really important for us to, be able to take back and question as well and see if this is something is this reasonable? Is this, a concern? Is this cloudy? Do we have specifics? So I've written down at least 13 things here, and I think staff have taken note too, but appreciate you going through it, and putting these questions forward.
Would you be able to provide your notes to staff,
Absolutely.
preferably electronically? Just,
Certainly, I'll send them in.
She's, Ms. White Fox was taking notes, but you brought up some valid points that I'd like staff to take a look at. So I just don't want to miss anything.
I was planning to, but it was late by the time I finished, so.
No, it's perfect. It's fine. One thing I think we need to talk about is you were stating that they were shooting until 10 p.m. My understanding of gun laws is that you can only shoot 30 minutes after sunset. So if that, I don't believe that was transpiring because you can't shoot under lights, can you? You can. So shooting was, okay, so that's, I wondered why we had the sunset clause in there because I thought there was other regulations that prohibited from going later, but I'd like the club to at least, if it's already in here, that's fine, but I want to know if they're shooting under the lights or permissions are to shoot under the lights is in the bylaw. I believe Ms. White Fox is responding to other individuals around the zoning. My dangerous level of understanding is that our historic from the 60s and 70s zoning gave shooting or gun clubs as a right in the 60s. And then this gun club was established and that was modified between the sixties and now. So Ms. Whitebox is looking into that and responding to another resident. I'm assuming you were going to then add Linda to that list to respond to as well. So we'll get you some answers on that. Nature of the beast records aren't always awesome. We're dealing with aggregate and we have the same difficulties trying to pull up historic stuff from that far back, but we will do our best to get that answer for you. And did we get the clarity on the 120? Oh, well, that'll, you get the notes on the 120 meters, whether it was to her property line or to.
Yeah, so through Mr. Chair, the way the mapping works, and this is just an easy one that I can answer today, is when we put it into our GIS tool, our mapping tool, it does distance from the boundary of the property line outward. So we get sort of a radius out. Yeah. And then oftentimes, if we see that it hasn't picked up everyone who might be impacted, this isn't a Planning Act application, so it's not a statutory requirement. We can add in some additional properties if we feel like they've been impacted. And so we did do that for this file when we surveyed the residents. We included some folks in North Dumfries and extended it a little bit. So we have some ability to be flexible with that in our system.
Thank you.
I guess lastly, I understand it's impacting you and your family. I'm concerned that, you know, where you want to land with this bylaw would make the gun club not be sustainable going forward. So I mentioned it when the president of the gun club was delegating. They're likely not going to be entirely supportive of the new bylaw. We might not hit every, you know, request that you're having. We're trying to find the happy medium. And I don't know if they went back to the pre-COVID types of experience that you had, if that would be satisfactory or not. I mean, I guess that time will tell, but we're going to do our best and see what we can come up with that's a happy medium to the residents and the gun club. But we definitely don't want to put them in a situation where they're going to insolvent or fold. That was not the intent, so. Sure.
That was not our intent either when we started, but it's nice to see that now they're reaching out and speaking to us. I understand the couple before that spoke that they have a lot of communication with the gun club, maybe because they're more involved. There was not that communication with ourselves or other residents that we've spoken to. So it's nice to see that. Yes, yeah. It's nice to see that it's changed and that they are engaging with us. So that's a very positive.
And it's always more difficult to engage with the people that are not supportive of your activity. So it's easier to be like, I don't want to call Linda. Whereas to actually come and talk to you and sit with you, it's very coming from a mayor. Like I have to deal with people that are upset all the time, and it's very challenging, right? Maybe I'm doing a poor job, but it's just not natural, right? So it's good to hear that they're, it'd be very easy for them to be like, oh, it's just Linda, we're not dealing with her and her family. They're not doing that, and that goes leaps and bounds. They're continuing the dialogue, and hopefully you guys can work through some things and just stay engaged, and we'll keep you informed. And again, it's first draft, so we'll continue to work through this, and I'm pretty sure we're going to see a resolution to move the report up so we can deal with it right after the delegates are finished, so that we don't have to keep everybody here for the day. All right, that's it I have. That's all I have. Resolution, please.
Yes, it's to receive for information.
Councilor Hurst, want to move that? Councilor Bailey, all in favor? Carried. Thanks, Linda.
Thank you.
I believe we're on to our last one, and it's Peter Van Delden. Wait, now. No, that's it, right? Welcome. Thanks for coming in today. You can start whenever you're ready.
Yeah, thanks. Good afternoon, or it's still morning, I guess. Mayor and councilors, staff. My name is Peter Van Delden, a technical director with RWDI. Noise and vibration. I'm also an expert on with CSA and ISO, the International Standards Organization. I've been asked to speak on some of the technical aspects of noise that were put forward in the draft bylaw. And so I have a few slides, just help me out here. Okay, so the bylaw makes reference, first of all, to NPC 232. Which is an old bylaw relating to guideline sound levels in rural areas. Now, in 2013, the guidance changed and the province replaced NPC 232 with NPC 300. You'll see that on screen here. This is a clip out of NPC 300, and it shows the 4 documents that replaced, that were replaced with NPC 300. Now, NPC 232 had a reference to 70 decibels as a limit for shooting ranges that were established historically. That portion was actually removed in NPC 300. So that is no longer part of the guidance from the province. So that aspect of things, the reference in the draft bylaw to 70 decibels actually comes out of a document that is no longer current, that has been replaced as it actually states in NPC 300. Moving to the next slide there. Excellent. Now, NPC 300 still deals with shooting ranges. It's listed as a stationary source. NPC 300 refers to all sources of noise as stationary sources, as opposed to road traffic, which is not a stationary source. And however, it's in a section that states that shooting ranges are not subject to Ministry of the Environment permitting requirements. So they're not required to be permitted by the Ministry of the Environment. They're explicitly excluded from that. However, NPC 300 is clear that they are not exempt completely from the Environmental Protection Act. Matter of fact, it actually requires that they still are subject to Section 14 of the Environmental Protection Act that deals with adverse effect. And if we can go to the next slide. Excellent. So the Environmental Protection Act in Section 14, I boiled it down to a few lines here to spare you all the extra text.
Thank you.
But a person is not allowed to discharge or permit to be discharged sound, as well as any number of other things called a contaminant, in such a way that they cause an adverse effect. And then the act actually lays out all the different things that could be considered an adverse effect. And for your benefit, I've got them all listed here. Impairment of the quality of the natural environment, harm or material discomfort to a person, things like that, loss of enjoyment of the normal use of property, interference with the normal conduct of business. All of those things would be adverse effect. And the courts have used NPC 300 as the basis for determining what a reasonable level of adverse effect is. So going on to the next slide, NPC 300 provides sound level limits by class of acoustic environment, right? Class 1 is your urban environment. Major urban centers is the way it's described. And that's an area where the acoustic environment is always the sound of human activity. It's dominated by the sound of human activity. It's mostly road traffic, but basically it always hums with the sound of the city, right?
Sirens.
Yep. But then you've also got class 3, which is a rural environment. I don't think I really need to tell you what a rural environment is. But a rural acoustic environment is dominated by the sounds of activity. So you may hear the occasional car, you're going to hear a tractor in the field, you're going to hear a barn fan, but it is dominated by the sounds of human activity, by the sounds of the sounds of nature. So then you have class 2, which is in between. And so during the daytime, you get the sounds of human activity. And then during the nighttime, you get the sounds of nature. So it's a kind of a transitional situation there. And then you've got class 4. Now, you'll notice that I've got class 4 crossed out because class 4 is a special area that land would be zoned as class 4. And that should only be done when the residences on it are constructed for sound isolation purposes. So you have to build from the ground up. NPC 300 is clear You can't just simply redesignate, but you build from the ground up something that is going to be satisfactory for sound isolation. That's not what you do with existing residences here. But class 4 exists to put the sound reduction on the residences themselves. And the result is a higher sound level limit. Now, I noticed that the draft bylaw makes reference to the higher sound level limit that comes from class 4. That does seem to be a bit of a mixed usage that would not be consistent with NPC 300. So to go back to what NPC 300 refers to, I've got the last slide here. And that would be for more than 9 impulses in an hour, limits of 45 decibels during the daytime, and that's until 7 p.m. and 40 decibels after that, basically between 7 at night and 7 in the morning. And if this was to be considered a class 2, so a transitional in between, those numbers would be 5 decibels higher. That's what I have. If you have questions.
Thank you. Very informative for the introductory to NPC 300.
It's what I've done for 23 years.
Yeah, no, you-
Well,
you-
NPC 300 for only the last
You
11.
did a great job of simplifying it so that I could understand it, that's for sure. All right, Councilor Hurst.
Good questions. I think, yeah, I'd say your preview was quite good, very accurate. I appreciate your being succinct.
Councilor Crowdy?
Yeah, I have no questions either. I appreciate the explanation.
I don't believe our bylaw makes reference to that first
NPC.
document you cite. It is in the motions I put forward, which is part of the council report.
Mhm.
And there are 2 other gun clubs that I'm aware of, and they've gone through the hoops as well, gone through the hoops of NPC 300. One is settled on 70 dBA, dBAI, and the second one is settled on 60 dBAI. The circumstances are a bit different. Given your presentation, you're basically saying it's got to be 45 to 55, depending on the classification. And NPC is a guideline. And I was just wondering how you bridged between what was done for those 2 gun clubs versus the NPC 300.
Yeah, I can't speak to the validity of those bylaws or the dates of those bylaws. I assume they're relatively current.
They're very current, just within the last
Yeah.
5 years.
Whether those numbers would hold up if it was challenged as an adverse effect under the Environmental Protection Act, that I can't speak to. That's legal guidance that I couldn't provide.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Are you a resident of Whistler or?
No, I actually live in Guelph.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
I used to be one of the farmers.
Yeah.
Some of the residents might have smelled.
Okay, yeah, I think I'd be concerned with adopting the 45 or 50 dBA level because I don't feel the gun club could attain it. And I think that would be the end of the gun club. And that's not, my understanding is that that's not the desire of the township. It's very informative. I think it's a guideline. So that was eye-opening to me, but those levels are going to be very problematic to attempt to attain.
Understood. Understood.
So,
Having done a lot of noise mitigation work in the past, I understand what that means.
okay, do you understand, logarithmic median mean, that LLM?
Absolutely.
Putting you on the spot. Can you explain that so that I can understand it? My understanding of it is that it's not an average because it puts a higher value on the peaks and they have more consequence in the final outcome.
Mhm.
But I'm just trying to understand this LLM a little more. And since I believe you're an expert, I would love to hear from you what LLM means.
Okay, let me step back first to a brief explanation of what decibels actually, how decibels function. So if you have 30 decibels, let's make that in simple terms. That's a 1 with 3 zeros. 40 decibels is a 1 with 4 zeros. 70 decibels is a 1 with 7 zeros. So every 10 decibels is an order of magnitude bigger. Okay. So now when you do an LLM, which is a logarithmic mean, you take the sound level out of the logarithm and you do your average. So if you average a 70 and a 60, you realize that the 70 as being 10 times bigger than the 60 is going to be way more prominent when you average it. So the LLM takes it out of the logarithm, does the average, and then puts it back into the logarithm. That's the way the math functions.
That did not clear it up for me.
Okay, all right.
Kind of did. It's complicated. I get it.
It is
I kind of get
complicated.
it. I kind of get it, but
Yeah.
it's, okay. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you for that free explanation.
No
I put
problem.
you on the spot. but
No
I-
problem.
All right, we went around the table. Did I skip you?
Skip me.
Oh, I did it again.
Okay.
At least I remember now.
No, I was just, and I'm not sure if you can handle it, like, answer this question. I don't know if it's a fair question to ask you. Sorry.
Ask anyways.
Reword that. So knowing that the decibel levels or the levels that are given as a guideline in here may be quite challenging to be attainable. Is there anything within the guidelines that speaks to anything grandfathered or something that existed before some of these, the 300 came into effect?
There is some guidance in NPC 300 about environmental permitting being transitional, but other than that, there is not. I know that when NPC 300 was introduced, this particular removal of the grandfathering in NPC 232 regarding firearms, that was a concern to me. But it was the explicit intent of the ministry to remove it. They said that's so far back, we don't need to worry about that anymore. But it was publicly posted and there was opportunity for objections. There were public meetings around it.
In
2013.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2012, I think, is when they had the meetings, but yeah.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much for this. This was, yeah, new information for me.
Sorry
Thanks.
for skipping it.
No, sorry.
So we have a resolution to receive it for information. Can I get Councillor Bailey to move that? Councillor
Yep.
Hurst, all in favor? Thanks again, appreciate it.
Thank you.
And you wanna move on?
We did as part of the
Oh,
resolution.
all right. What item number is it?
9.3.2.
So I will remind everybody in the gallery that when we're discussing this, that you are not permitted to interject, stand up and speak out. That time was when we were here. You can take your notes and follow up with council members and staff after. So I appreciate the decorum. Sorry.
9.3.2.
Sorry, I hit the wrong button. And representative, still trying to pull it. There it is. All right, I'm good to go. All right, Ms. Whitefox.
Thank you. Through Mr. Chair, this bylaw is being brought to the council based on previous direction from the May 1st, 2024 council meeting. As noted in the report, the township staff undertook some public consultation and included surveys out to landowners as well as consultation with the gun club. The report details what took place. And at this time, the main change under financial implications is just that staff have reviewed the enforcement potential from our neighboring municipalities, and that's not an option. So that's something that I think we've noted we will look at down the road when we get closer to adoption of the bylaw, but what that enforcement looks like. In addition, you'll note that there is not a complaint protocol that's been provided at this time, nor is there short form wording or set fines in the bylaw, which certainly would be added. So just to clarify, the penalty section that's listed in the bylaw now is related to Part 3 charges, which would result in the court conviction. So those penalties that you see there are not typical. Typically, what we do with bylaws like this is we have a set fines that are approved through the Ministry of the Attorney General. They're usually monetary, in nature. They're not as severe as what you see there. So that's just a clarification that the short form wording is something that would be adopted. We adopted in the majority of our regulatory bylaws to use as an education tool. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, we'll get into it. All right, Councilor Hurst, you're up.
All right, this is gonna go in a bunch of different directions. My apologies before I start. So I guess the first one, the noise testing equipment. I see within the proposal that the township's proposing to get a noise meter. I'll add that with the prior delegation from the Galt Sportsman Club indicated that they're undertaking some noise studying and forthcoming. So I guess what I'd really be interested in seeing is, based on the proposed bylaw, at 70 dBL, like what's happening in reality type of thing. And I think that would be an important piece to have before we get across the finish line. So maybe just one thought. Do we have any timelines, Courtney, as to when the sound testing equipment would be purchased and implemented or utilized?
So Mr. Chair, we are looking at this through the 2025 budget cycle. We've added this as an item. So in the new year, unless there's going to be pre-budget approval for something like this.
Okay. That's helpful. I'm just thinking where this all syncs together. Excuse me. Yeah, I think my next one, and I think what I was looking at from a bylaw would include probably 3 components. The first being a noise piece, which I think we got, a complaint policy, so that the public has a very clear understanding of what specifically is a complaint versus a nuisance issue. So I think I would really like to see some clarity on that one. And I think the third piece, which we talked about, is permitted timelines, which I think has been out there. Another piece, and I'm not sure where this fits. So again, I apologize for my rambling here, but within the Galt Sportsman Club, a noise abatement plan to some degree. And I think we talked about what a 2-year window may look like. And I'm not sure how, and I guess I leave this to township staff to guide, but how does a noise abatement plan, I'll say an agreed upon noise abatement plan with the Sportsman Club link with a bylaw and the timelines? So I think that's an important thinking piece, because I think, from my perspective, from like the larger community, if from what I've heard, is that the Galt Sportsman Club is open to discussing and potentially implementing noise abatement activities, which I think is incredibly positive. But what's that look like overlaid with the bylaw process? So again, maybe that's a really hard thing to answer right now, but that's where my head is going. Because I think I see them happening in parallel to some degree. I'm not sure if there's a comment from like township, what that looks like, or just under consideration. I think a couple others, and Councilor Sapoulis noted this previously, and in the research that I did around other municipalities, I looked at Uxbridge, they're at 60 dBL for grandfathered, 45 for new ones. They have a complaint policy and a permitted times. A municipality of Springwater landed on 70 dBL for grandfathered, 50 for new. Collingwood had permitted timelines of use exclusively. Brockville was very restrictive at 45 dBL. Clarington was at 70 dBL with 50 for new builds. So when I start doing the research, I kind of come into where we landed. I would say we're probably in that sweet spot initially based on my research of other municipalities, but I would certainly encourage staff to have a dialogue with some of those municipalities that are noted to say, you've already gone through this process. What worked? What didn't? What were the lessons learned in this process? If you had the opportunity to do it over again or revise it, I think it allows us to come to some point of, other municipalities have gone through this process. Let them have their pain points and we can learn from that. Not that everything's gonna be the same in regards to our community and the Galt Sportsman Club, but I think there's some really good opportunities to learn there. I'll stop there. I think those are my last ones. I guess the only other piece I would look for is, very, very clear understanding that this is the first cut of this bylaw and any guidance as to what the timelines may look like as we go through this process. And you noted the sound testing equipment being, the 2025 issue or potentially 2025. So I think it'd be important for the members of the Galt Sportsman Club as well as the members of the community just to have like a high level understanding of the timelines that this process will take, just set realistic expectations. That's everything I had. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Gordon?
Thank you, and I too, sorry, have been typing this whole time, so I'm a bit all over the place. I'm gonna try and sort of bring this in a little bit. Courtney, maybe this is a question for you. The club has talked about this berm that they're looking to build, and wanting some sort of assurances that it is feasible for them to do that. You mentioned that there has been some sort of preliminary contact or correspondence with GRCA. In terms of the township's permit approval process, would the club be, I don't actually know if right now we have the voluntary pre-consultation option available in our user fees. I know we did, and then we didn't, and now we're looking to do it again. I don't know if it's in there right now. But would the club be able to enter into sort of that pre-consultation voluntarily with planning staff so that they could gain a better understanding upfront of what would be required in order for them to get that permit before going through all of the efforts of what's required just to find out if they can actually build it?
So through Mr. Chair, certainly we can do that. Our permit process for site alteration requires the permit from the regulatory authorities. In this case, it's the GRCA. So they will have to have that component of it in order to get our permit finalized. But it would be something that staff could certainly do through pre-consultation to sort of set out what that looks like for our bylaw and what our permit process looks like. Oftentimes it's more just understanding, what's required versus reviewing the work, because we would need to hire a QP and have that person lead the project. But we could certainly outline what our bylaw expects from an application.
Yeah, okay. I think, hopefully they'd be willing to do that, but I think that would really help and assist in understanding, what are we actually talking about here? The license renewal. So we have a clause in this bylaw about a license renewal. It doesn't speak to what the expectation is in terms of how often that would be. Probably the assumption is annually. But I did notice that in the Firearms Act, there's a section there, section 9, and it talks about continuing compliance in the Firearms Act. And it talks about every 5 years after the date on which approval of shooting range was granted, the operator shall submit current copies of documents as well as evidence of continued compliance with the requirements referred to in the other section, which talks about municipal laws. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, a noise study is also valid for 5 years. So I guess my question is it reasonable, as long as there's no sort of dramatic changes happening at the club, no growth, anything like that, to have the renewal sort of aligned with what the Firearms Act is saying and do it every 5 years, which would avoid having a new sound study done every single year and the cost and the resources that are sort of affiliated with that? You may not be able to answer that today, but just.
So through you, Mr. Chair, similar to what we do with our kennels, which we have a licensing process, and they also have to be zoned. So it's very similar in nature. And the primary concern or complaint we hear from kennels is noise. So we do an annual licensing with our kennels. If it's a renewal, they don't necessarily have to provide new studies or new information. If they're confirming that their operations have remained the same and they haven't expanded and they haven't altered, we take an affidavit with those applications. But the benefit of having a check-in every year with these types of operations that are prone to bylaw complaints is just that. It's an opportunity for the township to check in with the operators, make sure that their operations are still in line with what's approved. And if there are alterations or things that come up, it's an opportunity to have that dialogue and conversation.
Okay, fair enough. But it doesn't mean they necessarily have to have sound studies done every single year. Okay, so that's good to know. Okay, this is another question that you may not be able to answer today. I'm trying to align what this NPC 300 and the Environmental Protection Act. I understand how that works when we have if a new planning application comes to council and we're looking at that. I understand how the Environmental Protection Act sort of fits into that framework in terms of sound studies and noise mitigation and all of those things. But in terms of existing historical uses that are zoned already a certain way, how does the noise enforcement from that act come into play? Do you know?
So through Mr. Chair, I'll be able to answer part of this, and then I will just mention for everyone who's interested in the bylaw in this process, we do conduct a legal review. So usually we'll get the first draft out there and get some feedback. And then when we're closer to where we need to be, we do have a legal review undertaken on all of our bylaws. With that said, as we already heard, NPC 300 is a guideline and it's used as an instructive tool for Planning Act applications. It may be used, it's not always used, but you can use it when you're looking at Planning Act applications and you're trying to assess the impact of noise for that new use on sensitive adjacent land uses. So it is something that the township has utilized with our consulting firm as we've looked at new Planning Act applications. In this case, the township is within its rights to pass a regulatory bylaw that sets a noise limit on the gun club, does not need to necessarily utilize the guidelines out of NPC 300. The township gets its authority pursuant to sections in the Municipal Act to do that. So there is regulations that we would build in for penalty systems within our bylaw, but we also need to understand that the Environmental Protection Act is enforced by the Ministry of Environment. So that is a separate enforcement body that oversees that legislation and any enforcement that could take place. It's my understanding that NPC 300 is not something that the MECP has authority to enforce because it is a guideline. With that said, I don't have all of the legal expertise around adverse effects. And as we heard from our delegate, what does the enforcement look like from the MECP, not the township, as it relates to a contravention of an adverse effect under the Environmental Protection Act? But we can certainly get those answers for council as we go through this process.
Okay, it would be helpful, I think, through the legal review to have that. As you know, it's disjointed what each government body is responsible for and how those regulations come into play. So it would be good to have a better understanding of that. And then just I guess this isn't really maybe a question, more a comment. The delegate today talked about the concern about the fines and how the fines could potentially be very problematic. I guess I just would like to understand, not today, at some point, if the club is demonstrating efforts to come into compliance, understandably there's noise studies, whatever. I don't know if there's some room for error built into those noise studies. I don't know if on a day where there's low clouds, if the sound projects. I don't know any of those details, but if the club is at least working towards compliance or making efforts to be compliant, is there some, I guess maybe discretion by our bylaw officer as it relates to those fines? You know, is it, no, you've broken the rule, fine. If you've broken the rule, fine. Or is there some room for us to?
So through Mr. Chair, again, the penalty section that you see in this bylaw here is if there was a summons to appear at court. It's a very different process. It's if we are getting non-compliance for a period of time, and that's the last resort that we use, it would be at provincial offenses court. So that's what you're seeing in the bylaw now, not to alarm anyone at the gun club, or to be misinformed for any of the residents that are looking at this bylaw. The township does utilize Part 3 summons on occasion, where the use and the contraventions necessitate that, but in general, we use Part 1. Part 1 are tickets, so they're fines. They're a parking ticket, there's something monetary that it's issued, usually not on the first offense. We do have a bylaw enforcement policy that talks about an educational approach in the township. So depending on the violation that's occurred and if it's validated, we typically do some education first. And then if it's something that's repeating and we're not seeing compliance, there could be fines that are issued through a Part 1 ticket. But again, what we will need to look more into is how we phase this bylaw in over the course of the next 2 years, knowing that there is efforts. And so long as those efforts continue to progress towards achieving the noise levels that are set in the bylaw.
I will leave it there. That's all my questions for now.
Yes, so I have several questions. Just a comment on the MECP. Some of the, this is in reference to Council Boyd's asking questions about MECP. I know from the residents who have tried to engage MECP on the noise emanating from shooting club, they just said they backed up. So I think you're going to get that response from any MECP inquiries. Noise monitoring. I really am concerned about having continuous staff presence for noise monitoring. I think we should have something in the bylaw that talks about noise monitoring. I'm sure there's other thoughts around the table, but my thought is every quarter we do our own noise monitoring, and we look at the frequency of complaints. And if we do see something that's out of whack, continuous complaints, and then we take the step to go out and measure again. But typically, you would establish a baseline at the beginning of every quarter. You'd say, yes, it's compliant, and away we go type of thing. But that's my thoughts. I'm sure there's other ways of doing it, but that's my quick thought. Thank you for the notes saying you're going to put in the definition of DPAI and the license renewals is annual. Well, what I'd like to ask is public meeting. At what stage should we have a public meeting? When I say public meeting, I mean personally engage availability for this document to comment on a wider audience.
So through Mr. Chair, after the legal review is done, I think would be most appropriate once we're in a bit of a better spot. Perhaps that's after the second reading.
Okay, so I'd like to suggest we incorporate that as part of the second review. Councillor Hurst made a good point. He was saying, well, okay, how does the timing of the various remediation measures that the club is proposing, how does it tie in to what we're proposing in terms of restrictions on the gun club? If possible, I'd like to see their timeline as it comes to the next council meeting, their timeline, and how does it compare during the course of the 2 years? Because right now, I don't know if the hours that you're proposing on a temporary basis for 2 years is good enough or not good enough. For instance, my first reaction was, okay, if we're experiencing all this difficulty on the weekends, maybe we ask the gun club to skeet shooting or clay shooting one day a weekend type of thing. And if they're progressing that they're going to have something in play within 6 months, well, maybe there's nothing to worry about. So there has to be some sort of I hate to use the expression, carrot and stick approach, but something that sort of, gives the, incentive to get on with it as soon as possible. And I think that's about it. Thank you.
Councilor Bailey?
Thank you. Great questions already ahead of me, so I don't have a lot to add. I like Councillor Sepoulis's suggestion about, a quarterly type noise testing. My question was more around noise level variation based on the season. I'm not sure if seasonally it's louder in winter and not as loud in summer and stuff, but that might come into play with complaints, might come, so anyway, it would be interesting to have a baseline if seasonally the noise levels are different and what that looks like. And then that ties into the complaint and the bylaw response. And right now, I do have a bit of a concern. We have one bylaw officer that does not work on weekends. So what does that look like? And I think having sort of set expectations about what the response, we need to have that kind of discussion in place. I think that's all I have for comment right now.
I'm just proud I remembered.
Thanks for
I feel
remembering.
terrible just giving you, it's just this linear thing. You start over here and you work this way and then get to me and it's my turn. All right. I think we need to have a discussion around what the enforcement will look like. Similar to what Councillor Sepoulis mentioned, I would like to see in the bylaw that it states that the municipality up to 4 times annually reviews the gun club, because I see it's going to be problematic that if somebody calls in a complaint about some noise, by the time we call our officer in, they arrive on scene, the people that were possibly, contravening the bylaw have gone home. So it's a waste of the officer's time. It's a waste of township resources. So random spot checks up to, and I say up to because of all of the challenges we have with bylaw in the township, I don't want to, not be able to respond to say something that's of an emergency of nature versus a monitoring component. I don't think the gun club's gonna like this next statement. I think we should have discussions with the gun club if they're interested in co-paying for this monitoring of their activity, because we generally don't, that I know of, have prescribed attendance to a use in the township. So that's a direct cost associated with the township due to that club. So just saying we should have the conversation. Maybe it's a go, maybe it's a not, but cost recovery on that. Father's Day, I don't know if I'm gonna get myself in trouble with this one, but I like the idea of having restrictions on certain days to address, maybe mothers, maybe there's a mother here that likes to shoot. I don't know. But maybe Mother's Day, it's a good idea to have a prohibition. But generally speaking, and I'm stereotyping or whatever it is, whatever type I'm doing right now, but I think it's mostly males that shoot. Maybe they want to go and shoot on Father's Day. So I would like to get some feedback from the club on what typically happens on a Father's Day historically. So I never even thought about it. I'm a gun owner. I never thought it might be something to do on Father's Day with your sons and daughters, whatever. So I'd like that discussion to at least happen specifically around that one. I'm supportive of the Mother's Day one. I'm not informed on the topic, but I think having a nice quiet family event on Mother's Day could be appreciated by the community. So I am in favor of some sort of incentive to get the mitigation in place. So right now it's the first draft, but I do know the club is full steam ahead on trying to get the berms in place, because they're going to mitigate the most problematic event that happens at the club. So they have incentive to do that. But depending on that process, if it is going to be a 2, 3, 4-year project, there needs to be something to mitigate the impacts of the neighbors that have concerns. What that is, we can work through that. I think we've done well on it. Do you have any questions that you have for council that you need clarity on?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I've made notes. If any delegates can provide their information in writing, that's also very helpful. And as we were, any comments that come in that maybe haven't been mentioned by members of the public via email is appreciated. If it's in writing, it's much easier for staff to review and take into consideration as we put together the next draft.
Just to maybe looking for staff to provide the public with some guidance. A lot of council has received emails, either in support or against the bylaw or sending in comments. But I don't think that's been documented at a staff level. Is that something, do we need them to then be submitting some of their emails to the admin if they want it on file, or how does that work?
So through Mr. Chair, typically, when there is public engagement like that, that we're doing, and you'll see that on our Engage Plus Lunch platform shortly. We do want the comments coming into staff that make sure that we can put them, record them properly. Oftentimes our members of councils are inundated with emails on all different matters. And so sending it to them is certainly that's your right to do, but it often won't make its way to staff. So our Plus Lunch email is admin@pluslunch.ca. If you have comments, sending it there is the most effective way to get it to staff.
And further to that, I believe technically, if you send me an email, then I have to reach back out to you to get permission to share it. And that can be laborsome. So it's just easier if you just add another line into the CC, either admin@pluslunch.ca. That way it automatically goes and it skips that step where we generally need permission to share an email. Because we hate to get into ourselves in some trouble, so. Oh, sorry, Councilors.
Courtney, and I don't want to get a hard date because this isn't fair to throw this out, but can you give us just a very, very high level understanding when we may expect to see a second draft of this bylaw?
So through Mr. Chair, and for the public, council is aware, we are headed into our budget cycle. So our meetings are ramping up here in the next little while, and there'll be the workload associated with that. So we're looking at likely a November meeting to bring something back. My best guess would be November 20th.
Thanks. I think it just gives the public a general understanding, like what kind of timelines we're looking at.
So what's the resolution?
The report ADM 2024-044 entitled Proposed Shooting Range Bylaw First Reading be received, and the council provide feedback to be incorporated into the next draft after the future meeting.
Gonna move for that, Councilor Scholas, Councilor Goida. Any last comments? All in favor? Carried. All right, we're gonna break at 11:30. I'll just break now, so then I can get to that other meeting.
You have 15 minutes. Did you want to do that?
Yeah,
In case people want to leave. so.
we just have to vote on it.
I know that, they know, they don't
Oh, yeah,
realize that.
yeah, you guys can leave now. I won't heckle you for disturbing the meeting.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for
Very much.
attending. Well, we could do consents real quick. No. Is there a lot of items you hold up for consents?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Let's do it quick. Want to read the?
No, I'm just.
Yeah, get it.
That the consent agenda items listed for the September 25th, 2024 council meeting be received for information.
I get a mover for that, please. Councilor Hurst, Councilor Bailey, any items to be pulled out? Councilor Hurst.
Just the one that I think came out in the pre-questions around the spill flood hazard, but I think staff have identified that as part of the documentation. That's all I have.
Okay. Councilor Goida.
6.2, 6.4, 6.10, and 6.11.
Councilor Bailey.
None.
Okay, we're gonna receive the rest of those, please. All in favor? That's carried. All right, 6.2, Councilor Schools.
Yes, this is the County of Wellington OPP Police Services Board report. Not specifically anything that's in there, but a question of staff. Given the two accidents we had in August on Brock Road that disrupted a lot of traffic, did we advise the police of our requirement to have increased monitoring?
So through Mr. Chair, staff did reach out. We did hear back from the inspector, I believe, and they are looking into the collision data and some other data on the road before providing the township a response.
Okay, and the second question related to that is the automatic speed cameras. Any word on that, or perhaps the mayor might be able to?
Yeah, I can help a little. It is progressing. It's my understanding that the signs are going to be posted shortly because we have that statutory requirement of, I'm sort of gonna get me, I think it's 90 days notice of electronic speed enforcement cameras coming. And it's also my understanding that the cameras, as the trial period, will be rotating through the community safety zones in the county. Now, they added more community safety zones maybe a month or so ago. So I'm not clear on whether it was the initial ones that were approved a year or so ago, or if it's all of them that it'll be rotating through. But my suggestion would be is just if staff could just reach out to the chair of the roads committee for that clarification. He'll be able to provide that. Have a little bit more, better, clear information on that. But it is in the works. It's coming.
Okay, I heard it's coming a long time.
I know. So,
okay, move on to the next one, Mr. Mayor. The ties in with Councilor Hurst thing, the letter from Ministry of Natural Resources.
just, I'll receive 6.2 first for information, please.
Can I make a comment on that too? Just within that report, there was Black Cat data in there, so it did show they did County Road 34 in front of Mini Lakes, and it showed no additional enforcement. I think the 85th percentile was 88 in an 80 zone, but they did do Lake Road, and it was 76 was the 85th percentile in a 50 zone, so it showed increased there. So just so the public's aware.
Okay, mover to seconder to receive 6.2. Councilor Hurst, Councilor Lewis, all in favor? Carried. 6.4.
Okay, this relates to the flood hazard identification mapping program. Is there, there's a question for staff before we pull the trigger and say we want to have this study done, and staff going to kick in at least 50% of the cost of the applicants do it, and it's going to be a 50%, 125,000, which is a good chunk of change. So my question is, would this, having this study, would it benefit from the point of view of identifying floodplain areas that are currently floodplain and might reduce the floodplain area to where we can have additional development within Osage?
So through Mr. Chair, that was staff's thought on this, when we saw this opportunity come forward, is that we have the Aberfoyle floodplain area. There has been discussion years and years that mapping may need to be relooked at to see if it's still accurate. This looks like a great opportunity to take advantage of that, but staff will bring this back. We have some time. We would like to speak with the GRCA to see if there is a co-application that we could do.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sorry, this is 6.5. We're talking about Ministry of
6.4.
Natural, which I have down as conservation help in this report.
Oh, I'm sorry, 6.5. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Thank
We'll
you.
amend that previous motion to include 6.4 that we received for information. It's actually 6.5.
Yeah, I'm
Thank you.
sorry, my
Okay.
mistake.
Thank you.
Any questions on that?
No, that's good.
Just maybe one clarifying point. When was the last time that was updated for the municipality? Like, is this like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago?
Through Mr. Chair, I don't have the date. I know that the conservation authorities are required to look at their mapping on at a certain frequency, but not sure if that's desktop reviews, if that's like what that looks like.
Yeah, I think I was just like, if it's updated and it can aid future community growth or development, then I'm fully supportive of going down that path.
Yeah, good.
I think it's good if staff or somebody can look at it and say, yeah, there is potential, but to spend 50 or 60 grand just to get the same delineated lines, I have reservations, especially if we have other avenues of growth on the horizon. So I'll leave it to staff, bring it back through the budget process, and I just, if you could have somebody take a high level look and say there is potential. If the high level look says there isn't potential, I'd have reservations about spending the 50 grand or 60, whatever half of 125 is. Councillor Bailey?
This ties in a little with 6.4, but at the last Conservation Halton meeting, they did a presentation on spill floor hazard policy, and it might tie into this. And what spill floor hazard is if you had a creek that swelled and then it overflowed into neighboring housing, things like that. So they're doing mapping that also ties into that kind of thing to show where development, can or cannot happen. So that's also happening locally anyway, and it might tie into that. So for development purposes, that might be interesting to know.
Do you have a second for that? Who
I
moved it?
think Councillor Scholes, he pulled it.
Okay, so Councillor Goode, second it.
Well, Councillor Scholes put his hand
No, he moved it.
I'm just.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay, all in favor? Carried. Okay, 6:10, Councillor Spose.
Yes, this seems to be a recurring comment, that there's a presence of the beaver dam on private property that may affect measurements. I'm gonna move that we advise the GRCA and get them to look at removing the dam.
So I called GRCA about this dam because it's on private property. It's my understanding that the landowner will not provide access to the property. I also spoke with Dufferin to see if there's potential to get access to it from the Dufferin side. It's very challenging. So then I called GRCA and said, hey, you're responsible for floods, but they don't look after the micro flooding of a beaver dam. So if we wanted that resolved, we'd have to get access and pay somebody to go in to remove the beaver and remove the dam. That is, it's not within the jurisdiction of their opinion, GRCA.
Okay, the reason I suggested GRCA, because we have the rangers that are hired every year and they go in and remove dams and all that sort of thing. So that's why I'm suggesting, but.
They're aware of the dam. They're aware of the dam.
Okay, then I'll withdraw that.
I don't, what we tried, we were in that corner, anyways, I did attempt.
Okay.
We had,
Mill Creek, perhaps, yeah.
Yeah.
And Council Boyd's got a suggestion, she brings it up to Mill Creek.
see if they can access the
Which
water.
means today.
Yeah, but
Good
that's-
timing,
So we'll just
At
receive
1
that one for
o'clock.
information, Councilor Spose.
really.
Yes,
Okay, so Councilor Spose moved to Councilor Hurst, all in favor? It's carried, and your last. one, Councilor.
okay, it's the provincial Williams Ontario Medal of Good Citizenship. I just want to suggest that we make this aware that members of the public can nominate other members. I don't think we need us to go through that process, but if they want us to co-sponsor it, I'm sure we'll be willing to do that, but I think the onus is more now on the public.
Public, let's just push it out through
Yeah.
socials.
Yeah.
All right, let's move by Councilor Spose, second by Councilor Hurst. Any concerns, discussions? All right, all in favor? It's carried. All right, so we're gonna break now and we'll see you at 12:30.
You need an hour?
I hope not. Welcome back. The next item on the agenda is public meetings. September 25th, 2024 at 7 p.m. Public open house meeting held in person in the Puslinch Optimist Recreation Center Gymnasium, 23 Brock Road South, during the Puslinch by Design background studies. And then October 9th, 2024 at 7 p.m. Public information meeting held in person at the municipal office, 7404 Wellington Road 34. And by electronic participation through Zooming regarding the proposed 2025 user fees and charges. Next, we have item 9.2.1, the hedging report. That's Mrs. Sam.
Good afternoon, council. I'm just going to the report. Sorry about that. So this is one of our annual reports required in accordance with the Municipal Act. A lot of the information is actually obtained from LAS, who is actually involved in leading these procurements. I'd be happy to answer any of council's questions.
Resolution, please, Ms. Whiteflax.
That report FIN 2024-021 entitled 2023 Commodity Price Hedging Agreements be received, and the council accepts the treasurer's statement that based on information supplied by Local Authority Services LAS, all commodity price hedging agreements are consistent with the township statement of policies and goals related to the use of financial agreements to address commodity pricing and costs as outlined in Schedule A to the report.
Moving on, please, Councilor Hurst, Councilor Lewis, any questions for the treasurer? Councilor Hurst?
Just one, Ms. Sasan, not specific to this report, but it just occurred to me that you're hedging energy and natural gas. Is there any program in place to hedge fuel costs as well that's beyond the scope of this report?
I believe LAS does have a fuel procurement program as well, but I believe as part of our answers to council, we do currently have a lease with our fuel provider. If Mike is on the call, he can speak to that further. But I do believe that LAS does have a fuel program.
Mike?
Okay, thanks. I think it occurred to me if there's other programs, maybe it's worth just internally having a discussion around best utilization if that's the case. And the tanks are leased and they're locked into a different scenario, that's fine. It was more a question from my perspective.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Just follow up on the fuel. I'd like to get an understanding of whether or not that firm that supplies the tanks and the fuel does offer hedging opportunities. And what is the current contract for the fuel and the tanks? In other words, how long it is? Is there an opportunity to do something else different after it expires?
So through Mr. Chair, staff can take that away and include it in one of our reporting back reports for council information.
Like you do, other than the colored fuel for the grader, I'd like staff to look into the commercial card lock at Ultramar. I have a friend that operates a business that used to have tanks at his property or wherever he was located. And he said that the price he was given to have it delivered to his business was always more than just buying it from the commercial card lock up at Ultramar. So I don't know if there's a way to measure that, but at least try or inquire.
Just an add-on, and I can just share this from our own farm business experience. Like we do minimum price contracts with our fuel suppliers. We have lease tanks at home. We use a fair bit in the spring and fall. So again, I don't want to get into the hairy details, leave that to staff, but there's lots of good options out there. And not Ultramar card lock may very well be one. Yeah, there's lots of potential out there, so look forward to a report.
Okay, that's great.
Just maybe as a question, I'm not sure if this is for Mary or Courtney, but is there, does it have to be a lease? Is it a possibility that we would purchase the tank and then have the ability to sort of shop around for more competitive rates for the actual fuel that fills those tanks?
So through Mr. Chair, and Mary or Mike might like to add, but I do believe that our lease agreement also includes sort of the maintenance and upkeep and that sort of thing of the tanks. And they were replaced as a requirement from our current insurer, just as we had the underground tanks previously. So I don't know at the time if this was the best option to ensure they were always in a good state of repair, but perhaps Mary and Mike could add to that if there's anything further.
Or just look at it.
Yeah, I don't need to know now, just your thought.
Great, any other questions? We have moved to secondary. Okay, all in favor? That one's carried. All right, proposed user fees and charges, Mrs. San.
So before you is the proposed user fees and charges report, very similar to previous years. We've actually included the benchmarking analysis in the initial report as directed by council. in the previous year. So there's some recommendations in there just based on the benchmarking that was completed and to ensure that the township is actually recovering the costs associated with some of these services. There's also some information within the report regarding recommended changes to the user fees or additions for user fees, and department heads and I can try to answer any of council's questions regarding any of the changes that are being recommended.
Okay, you want to read the resolution first, or?
The report FIN 2024-024 entitled 2025 Proposed User Fees and Charges be received, and the council directs staff to proceed with holding a public meeting on October 9th, 2024 at 7 p.m. to obtain public input on the proposed user fees and charges bylaw as outlined in Schedule 8 of the report, and that staff report back to council with the results of the public meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Hurst, Councillor Spillis, questions for Mrs. Sam?
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Dion.
Go ahead.
Oh, one very brief one, and I feel this is incredibly self-serving, but I saw in there that there were some township pins being offered for $5. Maybe my request would be that the Doors of Quislinch posters be also included. That's an initiative of the Heritage Committee to sell publicly, if that can be included. That's the only thing I had. I think the rest came up in the Q&A session.
I'm sorry, I do believe that the Doors of Quislinch poster is also included in Schedule A of the bylaw, of the proposed bylaw.
Forgive me, I missed it then, so
No
thank
problem.
you.
Sorry, I did forget to add something when I was first discussing the report just regarding haul route permit security deposits. So we did miss adding that to the public works schedule, and I just wanted to receive council's direction to add that the security deposits for haul route permits. Justine can answer any of council's questions regarding this, but it was inadvertently missed in this draft of the bylaw.
We need to include that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm just adding any revisions that council wants to see or that staff recommend just in the resolution, just so that we can make sure we make these revisions prior to it going to the public meeting. So I have it captured right now.
Good. Okay. Councillor Gordon?
Yeah, I do have a couple questions. This is not necessarily a change to be made before the public meeting, but I just, the jump in the fee for the gym, I would be interested in learning some feedback as to what the sort of perception of that is. I understand the benchmarking and the comparator municipalities, but I also think that the gym is a really great facility. Just like I know as a family, we rent it sometimes just to play badminton or whatever, and it's like almost a $20 jump. I would be interested to get feedback at our public meeting about that specifically. And then the other point was about the tennis. And I'm not sure if it's the right time to bring it up now under the user fees discussion or at the budget discussion. We have, the way I understand it is we now have, you can rent sort of 2 courts at a time, and the 3rd court is left for either drop-in tennis or for a separate rental. And I know that if there's, let's say, tennis lessons happening on the 2 courts and maybe a more advanced game happening on the 3rd court, a lot of balls could be jumping around. My daughter plays tennis in Guelph, and they have these nets that kind of separate internally the courts so that while she's doing lessons, her ball doesn't fly off her court into the next game. And so I'm just wondering if it would be something that we could consider just between the sort of the single court and the double courts to maybe look at netting in between there. And if that gets incorporated into the user fee or just a budget item, I'm not sure. Just
What does staff report back on if they're receiving complaints from when it's rented versus people playing? Because if we're not really encountering that circumstance or condition, as it were, more.
I'm happy to receive staff's recommendation on that.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from the person who's Just see a maintenance thing and when we put them out. and all
Absolutely.
that
I
stuff.
have no idea what they would cost. I have no idea what that maintenance is like.
And so
It's just something that I have seen that works well in other facilities, so just something to look at.
And my questions were answered in the notes sometime.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Let's do it again.
Actually, just to pick up, I had some notes too about the tennis courts, and I was wondering if there was a way staff could be tracking rentals in the year coming up to kind of work toward a cost recovery or work toward rentals paying for netting. I know there's different netting you can put in the fencing to help with wind. So there are some things we could be purchasing for the tennis courts. And then I'm looking at the fees of the tennis courts, wondering if that would actually cover any of those costs. So I'm just wondering if we can give direction to staff to just try to help track maybe some of the tennis rentals and just seeing what our cost recovery is or what our, how that's working for expenses or in the upcoming year. That makes sense.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, we can certainly track the rentals and then look at it against like utility costs, staffing costs. Mary, I don't know if you have any of that information. I did see some information was provided to council around the sort of comparing the overhead costs of our facilities to the rental rates and just demonstrating that they really aren't designed to be cost recoverable in that way. And that the township does subsidize the use of the facilities through the tax levy.
Yeah, and that is the current case. Like if we look at the budget, the 2024 budget versus budgeted revenues versus expenditures, like a lot of it is funded through the tax base, and that's consistent with other municipalities as well, just to ensure that some of these rates are affordable. But I think the benchmarking analysis that we do, just comparing to other municipalities, is also very helpful in terms of seeing where there's room to increase some of our rates. Yeah.
Okay. You've you've tied right into what my question was, switching over to the ORC. I was just wondering if you could comment on the recoveries at the ORC. I don't know if you have like a number of what the recoveries are, what percentage of operating costs is kind of recovered through the rental rates. And then if you have any recommendations on any options to improve those recoveries.
Yeah, so at the ORC right now, just based on the 2024 budget, just comparing expenditures to revenues, we're at a 39% recovery. Some recommendations in the past, in previous years, was to provide a lower reduced rate. So right now we offer a 75% reduced rate and a 90% reduced rate. So the 75% reduced rate is offered to eligible organizations. The 90% reduced rate is offered to seniors groups and programs such as that, like township-based programs. And so a past recommendation, just based on surveys done of other municipalities, both comparator and boundary municipalities, was that the reduced rate recommended at the time was 50%. But council at the time decided to go with the 75% and 90% reduced rate for those organizations that are eligible for reduced rates.
And right now, those organizations that do get the 90% reduction, do we get any feedback? Do we have any tracking about, how many individuals the renter is servicing, or do we have any data on their sort of financial state or anything like that?
Yeah, so one of the initial items that are required in order to be eligible for the reduced rate is like a copy of your letters of patent or articles of incorporation. I don't believe we get financial statements, but yeah, some of the organizations are also organizations that applied to our annual grant program, and so we do receive those financials, but through this process we haven't requested financial information.
Okay, and you were referring to just organizations that meet the 90%, but what about individuals that rent that get the 90%?
I believe it's just a couple of organizations that currently meet the 90%. I believe Whistle Stop is one of them, and some other seniors organizations. But Sarah may be able to assist further just based on her knowledge of some of these organizations in the past.
Mr. Chair, I'm just pulling up that information, so bear with me here.
Is this the report that talks about minor balls for the request? Is it very
Through you, Mr. Chair, the groups that we do have that qualify for the 90% reduced rate is the Whistle Stop Cooperative Preschool, the Guelph Community Health Center or Early On Play Group, and Pickleball, Puss Lunch, religious organizations. Those are the 4 that do qualify at this time for the 90%.
Okay, where I'm kind of going with this, sorry, roundabout, but I was just wondering if we'd be able to sort of get a bit of a report from, say, Pickleball or whoever's renting that involves a lot of participants, and kind of track how many are using the gym, how many are actually benefiting from this 90%. You know, if they have a financial report to show at the end of the year, just to help us collect some data on who's kind of benefiting from this 90% reduction. Because if you do look at the numbers, I mean, that's very small, like $2.57 an hour to rent the gym, you know, is a very low number that is not getting us anywhere near, you know, helping with recoveries. So I would just like to look at how that's being used.
Good. I can start over there. Yeah, I would caution that we're not going in a direction of trying to get full cost recovery for our municipal facilities. But is $2 something an hour appropriate for 20 people to come play a sport? Might be a little on the low side. So I think we need to see those numbers of what total we're paying and total numbers, but I don't know if we should be directing this through the rec committee. That I feel like we have a rec committee, we're maybe circumventing them. I don't know. Councilor Corda, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think for the rec committee to collect that data would be perhaps a little bit challenging. But perhaps if there was some kind of data that was collected and became available, I think having the rec committee review that data and possibly
Make recommendations
based on that, it would be, you know, I think it'd be a great project for the rec committee. I'm just not sure operationally how we can, you know, in what format are we requesting that, and how are we kind of like ensuring that we obtain that information from these groups. I don't know if they have the resources to even produce. I don't know. I see where you're going and I like the idea. It's just the implementation of that.
So if we have staff on, if we know certain group is renting, didn't we used to, we did it for rollerblade. We counted how many people used it. Can we have a discussion, or can staff monitor some of these 75-90% discount users and get an idea of how many people are using it just if they're on duty?
I just figured the renter would be the one to be able to give us that data and not putting it back on the staff to have to track it. But
I don't know. What are your thoughts?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I think asking staff to do it would be likely burdensome. I know that there's other tasks that they try to do while they're at the facilities. I know that previously we would have, I believe it was soccer would provide a listing of membership when they registered each year, and it would sort of show the number of kids, Puss Lunch residents, non-residents, and it would break it down in that way, and that was how fees were calculated previous to how we do it now. So I think it could be something that could potentially be built into eligibility criteria in the bylaw for those groups, saying, what do we want the reporting to be? Is it annual? Is it, and what is that reporting expectation for the groups that are receiving the discount? And staff may want to take that away and just hash out the details of that and maybe bring something back to council.
And also, go ahead.
I was going to suggest perhaps better use of recreation committee's time is to see, does it make sense that a group gets charged $2 an hour? That's cheap compared to the world out there.
What I was gonna say is, 75 or 90% reduction to a maximum reduction of X. So is it $5 an hour? Is it $7.50? Because the 75 products, yeah, so you get the idea.
That's what I'm thinking. I would like to give that task to the rec committee, saying, is it appropriate that the, say, the $75% reduction is X and the 90% reduction is Y? Is that appropriate given the circumstances? Like $2, that's pretty cheap.
Yeah, well, especially when you have 30
$10
people playing, right? Like,
Well, sorry, if I can, for non-residents, and I would love the reporting to say, look, like, this organization pays $2.50 an hour, and actually 50% of the participants don't even live in the township. So to me, that's not reasonable if the rec committee's, gonna look at it. Like, I would think, we don't mind subsidizing for residents of Puss Lynch, but if we're starting to subsidize out of town people to come do it, that really doesn't make sense to me. So anyway, I'm not sure what staff is taking away, but for me, I would just like maybe some sort of reporting at the end of the year, and if that could be part of the policy of getting the reduction for qualifying, I would like to see something like that.
So through you, Mr. Chair, just a question around timing, because we are here sort of to review the user fees. It's going to go to a public meeting and then they will be passed sometime this calendar year to come into effect January. Is this something where we could build in the eligibility criteria for reporting into this version of the user fees and charges bylaw, but perhaps don't make any changes to the reduction amount until we have a full year of reporting from the group? So it could be something to review in 2025.
I think that makes sense.
yes.
I think that's reasonable, and then in the meantime, to Councilor Sapolis's point, maybe the rec committee, in the meantime, could look at, comparatively to other municipalities and other similar facilities, what is appropriate in terms of a sort of minimum rate per hour.
I don't know if I can't support the gymnasium going to $54 an hour for that. Comparable gyms are likely full courts. People that can play there can play 5 versus 5 basketball. That would mean the cost would be distributed differently. So, I mean, I can support a modest increase, if we're choosing arbitrary numbers, the $40 range, but to go to 53, I think that's a little steep because there's likely not apples to apples comparisons out there. I'm not familiar with too many half-size courts or 2/3 size courts to compare to. The tennis courts, I think there should always be a component of one court available for walk-ons. The public are used to being able to walk on it. I believe we have that whiteboard there now that staff write on it. That may be sufficient for now, but I just don't like the idea of all of them being rented and then somebody showing up from the community to play with their kid and not being able to get on. So, the most they should have to wait is an hour if it's occupied. So it's kind of where I stand. I like the idea of finding out what they need, but I also think if no news is good news. I mean, we have a great tennis court there. It's brand new.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I want to get into spending money putting, like if you tell, hey, do you want mesh on your fence for the wind? I don't think the answer is gonna be no. So I'm a little hesitant to be planting ideas to spend more money, but, I don't know if staff can, when we get rental agreements, can there be a link, hey, any, like, you know, recreation feedback, here's the link, like on the application or something. That way, if people are encountering things, a little bit onus on them to submit it there. That's just my 2 cents, so. Oh, and the baseball, I need to be walked through, baseball requests that they get first, like what they call it, first right of refusal for the diamonds, and I believe the staff are recommending no. So my understanding is that they're just wanting, if the time slot becomes open, they want to be asked first if they need it, and staff are saying, no, we don't want to do that. Am I understanding that correctly?
Sarah, do you want to maybe first speak to this and I can add to it?
Absolutely, Mary. If you, Mr. Chair, no, that's not what staff is saying. That actually is our common practice at this time. So if we do have any of our returning teams, when we send out that initial email to engage our previous renters, if they have any intentions on returning back the following season, if someone at that time was to say, no, our team is no longer interested in your facility, or the team is no longer in existence, that existing time slot would be offered to Post Minor Baseball. That was a practice in the past, especially at the beginning of the year when they would request any, like if there is any additional time, if you do have any of the renters who don't return, we would always take that into consideration and offer them that time.
So we were already doing what they're requesting us to do then. So we just need to maybe notify them. Did you already notify them of that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, was communicated that any of the available time slots, they were available to it. No one turned away their rental times. So everybody's rental times year after year has been consistent. So there wasn't any of that more ideal time slots available. So there wasn't that opportunity to offer them more. There are some time slots on weekends and on Fridays that are available, and they always have that first opportunity to book those slots at the beginning of the season.
But I think in response to their request, it'd be valuable to respond to them and say that we've already been doing this. It's just that we don't even have to go this deep, but nothing has become available to offer to you. But our standard practice has been if a returning renter doesn't, then we would offer it to Postage Minor Ball first. So, because they requested it, right? And they clearly somehow missed the message, but
I think though, the one other thing that they were asking is that for any, so for instance, if I'm now a new baseball league and I'm looking for sort of a certain time slot every week, I think what West Orange Minor Ball is asking is that as now a new organization coming in, I wouldn't be guaranteed those time slots next year. West Orange Ball is asking for first right of refusal before my new rental now turns into a recurring rental. Is that right, Sarah?
Possibly, Mr. Chair, that's what they're asking for, that if any new leagues come to, that wasn't my understanding. I think it would probably be them to clarify that that's a request.
yeah. I would get clarification because I don't think that's fair. I think that if the slot becomes open and the township has offered it to them and they've declined, and then somebody else takes it, then they now become the, I don't want to call it owner, but now going forward, they get first right of refusal on it. So you get one kick at the can, not in perpetuity kicks at the can, so. But maybe get clarity from, because I thought there was some thing going on there that I wasn't understanding, so. That's great.
Can I just ask another baseball question? I don't know if Mr. Fowler's available, but where are we at with the fourth diamond? I know the report mentions the 3 main diamonds. West Minor Ball had mentioned the lower diamond at Morrison Meadows. I'm just wondering where that's at and if there's going to be potential for rental of that diamond, where that's in the asset management plan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the information I was provided this year is that the lower diamond, all the improvements were made and it was utilized 1 day a week. Is the last information I have.
We don't rent it out. It's not rented?
Sure, no, it's not rented. It's a first come, first served.
Okay. Okay.
I have a ice hockey or ice question. So I heard we're tracking at 39% of revenues were through the second quarters. Can you repeat those numbers for me, Mrs. Sand?
Yeah, so just looking at the 2024 budget, revenues versus expenditures, it's 39%. As of the second quarter, we're at 37%, which is relatively consistent with what the budget was.
Okay, I don't know if you're gonna be able to answer this, but we raised our ice rental rate last year through this process. But we had obligations under the old rate. So how much of that second quarter reporting is captured under the old rate versus the user fee and charges set for 24? Because what I'm trying to get at is I have concerns that our rate is getting too high and we're going to see a decline in rentals. But I don't think 24 is gonna be a good measure of that because we're gonna have carryover rental agreements that were at the old rate. We won't see the full impact until 25 on the ice rental.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So our ice rental prime year-to-date actuals as of the second quarter are 32,000 with a budget of 38,000. So we did well in that in terms of the ice season earlier this year. But Sarah may be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that, Sarah, a lot of the rentals came in 2023, and so they would have been, the 2023 rate would have been eligible for those that would have rented in 2024. Is that correct?
That would be correct. So through you, Mr. Chair, when we do open up our ice rentals for the season, they actually take place the year before. So taking into consideration this year, we would send out those notices to our users. If they do want to rent with us in the 2025 season, we're creating those contracts in 2024, so the 2024 rate would be applicable. So you wouldn't see that increase of that the 2025 rate until we're actually creating rental contracts right in the year 2025.
Yeah, so it's good. We see the historical revenues. So 25 will be the first full year that our renters will experience the higher ice rate. So I'll just keep a pulse on it because I'm a little worried we're getting a little too expensive, but that's fine. I think that's all. Anything there that you guys need clarification on? We haven't addressed.
What was the direction for the gym rate then? What did you?
I just stated that I think it's too high. I believe that Councillor Goida, I call you miss.
Miss.
Never call her that. Councillor Goida mentioned that, it was you.
Yeah.
It was a little steep, so I was piggybacking on that. I think it's a little high, so.
So you, Mr. Chair, we may get feedback the same way through our public information meeting. Council can look at this bylaw again after that. To see if we do get any specific comments on any of these user fees that are increasing. But I did capture some directions specifically around the tennis courts. So we're reporting back to determine if there is a need for dividing netting to separate the courts. We are going to get council direct staff to require community groups that are eligible to receive the 90% reduced rate to provide annual reports on memberships. And this would outline residents versus non-residents, costs charged to members, etc. And the council direct staff to include this reporting obligation into the eligibility criteria for the user groups in order to qualify for the reduced rate for 2025 user fees and charges bylaw. And that eligible groups be required to provide the reporting during the 2025 year in order for the rec committee to review and make recommendations to council regarding the reduced rates for the 2026 user fees and charges bylaw.
So not just community groups, but also individuals.
I can make it so that any eligible person or group.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure, in view of Councilor Goyle's, your concern on this charge to the gym, I don't have a problem making a motion that we cut it in half from what it's gone.
Yeah, I think 53 is a little steep, but
So if I make a motion, be reduced to say $42 an hour.
I think that's reasonable.
I think we leave it in there and see what the public,
Yeah, but
see what the public says.
how many people are gonna actually come out?
They
There's a
care,
motion on
they
the
should.
table.
I have a motion on the table.
Seconded by Councilor Goyd. Now you can say your statement. Okay.
I think we should leave it in there. Staff have recommended it and done some of the calculations based on neighboring communities and see what the public says.
That's hers.
I was thinking 45 in my mind, so I think that's probably maybe where it ought to be, but if the recommended process is to go through the public consultation and change it thereafter, I'm supportive of that.
I think we put it in at what you said, 42, and there's still, even at that rate, the opportunity for the public to make a comment on that. So it, you know, even if at 42 it comes in too high, we can have that discussion again. But I think they need to go to the public with such a dramatic change, just asking for.
Well, the public are paying the difference anyway. So.
Any comments you want to add?
No, I hear both you and Councilor Goyda, and yes, that's a big jump, and I'm okay with supporting that.
Yeah, I'm good with the 42, so all in favor of 42? All right. And that'll be included in the public consultation, so that can change again. All right. Did you want to hear specifically from each counselor about the rental of the tennis courts on the configuration? I know I spoke specifically to it. I feel Councilor Goyda did, but I don't know if we.
So, through Mr. Chair, I have it in the resolution that I've made an amendment to the resolution that was on the floor. And again, it's just to investigate, and bring back options. So if that's where but it's in there right now, but I can revise or remove as needed.
You've heard what you've had to say, so.
Do you have a question about the tennis courts though?
Sure.
So if someone was to rent all three, what sort of notification would there be to residents to know that, hey, I can't just show up and try to play right now because there's an event happening?
So through Mr. Chair, I do believe we have our calendar that's posted online that folks are encouraged to check out to see what's available, what facilities are open.
Where do they go for that calendar?
On our website, and you can go, I believe it's under the recreation page, and it's up to date as well, I believe there, yeah.
All right, thank you.
I don't know if, not to add more into Laura's portfolio, but some public education in generalities of please check recreation calendar before using our free facilities, because that's the walk-on ball, I don't know if that's a good example, we would rent that, but even the baseball diamonds, I have inquiries, hey, I want to bring my kid up to play catch, so I need to rent it, and I'm like, well, if you're not an organization, you will play catch on the baseball diamond, but I say to them, if you want to ensure you have it, rent it, right? So if people know to go to the calendar and check before they go to the tennis court or whatever it may be, then that's at least a little bit of a preemptive strike for us that. So on the ticker or something. If not, it's fine too. All right.
I don't know if Mary had anything else she needed
Mary?
direction or clarification on.
Is there anything else that we haven't given you direction on that you require some clarification?
No, I think Courtney did a great job with that resolution. I think everything's captured in there, so.
All right. Do we have a mover in a second?
It's still moved by Councillor Hurst, seconded by Councillor Spoulis, but I've revised it since then.
Any last comments before we vote on it?
We're still good.
I don't think so.
Voted on the $42 rate for
Oh,
the gym.
okay. Right.
Yes. Okay, all in favor? That one's carried. All right. Is Michelle with us? Yes, she is. Quarter financial report. Oh, no, it's presented by SSN.
Okay, so this is just our quarterly financial report that's prepared in consultation with department heads. There were several questions asked, which are included as part of the addition on the agenda. But I'd be happy to answer any further questions from council in collaboration with the department heads here.
The report FIN 2024-025 entitled Second Quarter Financial Report for 2024 if you received for information.
Move for that, please. Councilor Goyda and Councilor Spose. Questions? Spose.
Just one, with regard to the unrestricted income, and the answer was that the prime interest rate is continuing to decrease. I'm just wondering, do we lock into a prime interest rate or an interest rate annually, a different annually, or do we do it on a 5-year basis, or how does that work?
So we do have temporary investments, and we do lock in with some of those, but the prime, our bank account, our general and restricted bank account is attached to the prime interest rate, and that does fluctuate on a monthly basis. But if we do have excess funds, we do invest in our investments that we report to council on annually.
Okay, thank you.
Timing wise, when will we see the third quarter report?
Hopefully in November. We do have a lot of reporting obligations, and we do work our best to provide these in a timely manner, but hopefully by November.
Reason why I'm asking that is, as highlighted by council, one of the items I picked up on was the electricity use at the ice rink, Murph, whatever is labeled in there, or Murph, whatever it is. But I understand though, you know, January to March is early in the year, we're gonna incur a ton of costs, and we generally don't start the ice until the end of December, so that may represent our close to our total costs on power. But if we're seeing now that the curtains are working and that our energy use is going up for that thing, it's just concerning because it's a large number that we're already over in the budget second quarter. So if that continues to rise, clearly we've got to make adjustments in the budget going forward. But the sooner we get those third and fourth quarter reports, the better, because I know for a while there we were behind. We've been working diligently to get them to us, you know, sooner, which is great. So I'm just looking forward to seeing that those other reports coming forward. But do you have anything else in there? All right, make the review. So all in favor of that one? That's carried. Note. All right, this one is presented by you. You can delegate.
I will. So through you, Mr. Chair, our municipal clerk actually prepared the majority of this bylaw, so she'd be best to speak to it.
Oh, you were gonna delegate anyways.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the purpose of this report is to report back to council on a number of items. Outlined in this report are a few items related to some aggregate monitoring reports, as well as an update related to the Mini Lakes Arrow posting, and I would be happy to answer any of council's questions.
Great, do you want to read the resolution?
Yes, the report ADM 2024-043 entitled Reporting Out from Council Direction, update be received, and the council direct staff to provide the peer reviews of the 2022 and 2023 Lafarge McMillan East annual monitoring reports to the pit operator and the MNR. And the council requests again that Lafarge provide copies of all future McMillan East annual monitoring reports to the township in lieu of the township continuing to obtain the reports via Freedom of Information request to the MNR. And the council direct staff to provide the peer review of the 2023 Mill Creek aggregate annual monitoring to the pit operator and the MNR.
All right, move for that, please. Councilor Hurst, second by Councilor Bailey. Questions, Councilor Hurst?
No, not that this time. I think the only one I had was like, you know, at some point an update from Mini Lakes on their water management strategy. I recall a number of months ago they came and presented an update. So I was just curious where they're at with their sewage. They're going through the public consultation, but maybe a request once they complete that for further status update.
So I did see the ERO posting for their temporary sewage treatment, and I flipped it to Ms. Whitefox because I wasn't sure what was going on, and she was aware, but and it's in the report that they sign off on it or whatever, but that's at least progress because they're working towards getting that system, but we plan on just following up with them.
Yeah, so with you, Mr. Chair, I know there was a number of times council had asked for annual, like quarterly updates and capital project monitoring updates and things like that. We haven't received them in a little while, so we should follow up and see if maybe they're able to attend a future council meeting or in lieu provide those reports.
I'll go around, I'll come back.
Yeah, I would support that. I have nothing to add.
That's note 6, the Mill Creek aggregates annual reporting. Our hydrogeologist was happy with that. One thing that I came across was that the red count in the creek has been diminishing over the last few years. And in the technical appendix of the report, there's a suggestion by a consultant that some of the large trees and wooded debris be removed in order to minimize the flow of debris. It goes on to say should look at improving the environment and monitoring whether or not the red count comes up. So I'd like to move that this particular recommendation be forwarded to the GRC and Mill Creek aggregate for furtherance.
You said Mill Creek aggregate, you mean Dufferin aggregate?
Oh, that's the Mill Creek aggregates peer review, so it's the same thing.
Yeah, I would, I was gonna say we should forward it straight to Kevin Mitchell, who looks after all the rehab and that, but can we, let's do that. Let's just make sure Kevin Mitchell gets it and I will get you have his email here. Because that might just skip some bureaucracy.
Oh, sure, absolutely, yeah.
I'm sorry, who'd you say, GRCA?
Yes.
What about Mill Creek Stewards? Because don't they do that volunteer work? Maybe they.
Yeah, well, they do it at the bidding of the GRCA. The GRCA would say, you go ahead and do that.
Okay, because I think it's a good idea, because if the trees are on Dufferin's property, maybe Dufferin gives them permission to remove them. Or vice versa.
They do say they've gone in there and removed the dam on their property type of thing, the beaver dam. So they can do something with this as well.
Okay, so you captured all of that?
It's specifically regarding the beaver dam.
No, specifically regarding the red count, fish count.
The recommendation, the appendices.
Yeah, technicals, page 17 of the technical appendix C, 2023 annual fisheries report of the Mill Creek coordinated report. It was in the comments that I made, and it's sort of lifted out as well.
Yes. I've added it to the motion that's on the floor, on the table already, so it's not on it.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to, the notes in here about the Grand River Conservation Authority. I was not able to attend the virtual webinar last night. I don't know if any other council members were. And I think we still have invited GRCA to come to a council meeting, but they couldn't come today. So is the intention that they'll come at a later date to present the strategy? Is that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, staff were looking for some clarification on if council would like to have the GRCA come once the strategy is completed to present, similar to what Conservation Halton has offered.
I mean, I still think that's a good idea for have GRCA come out. At our last Conservation Halton meeting, there was a really great presentation on the impacts to the really rainy weather we had in August. They had photos of sort of the damage or the high levels and the concerns, and they highlighted a lot of things on there. And so I wondered if Grand River Conservation had something similar where they could present, the impacts to Puslinch when all that heavy rain came, and just get us kind of thinking about what if there's more preventative measures we need to be taking, or start that conversation, because it's bound to just get worse. So.
Still required?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, just coming back to Councillor Sapulis's request about the Mill Creek aggregates and the reds, the reduced or the low red count.
Yes.
I think if you're okay, if council's okay, I think it would be beneficial to forward that also to Friends of Mill Creek.
Sure.
Not necessarily in terms of an expectation of a response or necessarily an action plan even, because Mill Creek Rangers are run through the GRCA, as you mentioned. But I think it is also, that group does a lot of sort of data collection on the health of the creek, and I think that would possibly be information that would.
Sure, I'll accept that as a friendly amendment and a copy forward to Friends of Mill Creek for their information.
All right. Anything further? Okay, all in favor? That's carried. Moral Park Safety Study. All right, Ms. Whitefoots.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. This report is a follow-up from a delegation that council received on March 20th, 2024. In the report, the delegation items are listed. And what council had requested staff to do is to go away and come back with some costing, so a quote to conduct the safety study of the area of the play structure on Gorham Park and the very adjacent area around that, which includes part of a stormwater management facility. And so what this report is providing council with is that quote. It's from a company, engineering company called Urban and Mind, in collaboration with Tatum Engineering. And the costs are outlined with the scope of work in the report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, do you want to read the resolution?
So the resolution is to receive the quote, and then we're asking council for direction. So to either proceed or not to proceed with the scope of work outlined in the quote attached to the report as Schedule A.
All right, any move for that, please? Councilor Lewis, Councilor Hurst, comments, Councilor Hurst.
Yeah, I think the only one I had was and maybe I missed it, was just some timelines to complete it by.
So for you, Mr. Chair, it would be completed this year. So we would be looking once we get, if staff are directed to proceed, we would get a retainer letter established with the company, and then we'd set up timelines for the completion this year.
So are you looking for direction on which assignment, one or two, or
So through Mr. Chair,
three?
there's, the quote itself includes all of it. So the first assignment includes that sort of physical data gathering. So they've assigned a cost to what that would take to sort of walk through the park, get all of the information. The second assignment is really just the phase 2 of the project. That's what we'll do the road review. And then what's not included in the actual quote, but is in the report, is Tatum Engineering's $1,500 fee to provide that sort of context and memorandum on how the swim facility functions.
Gotcha, okay. So we're looking around $5,000.
Yes, just a bit over 5,000.
Which is the combination of 1 and 2 combined, right?
1 and 2 plus 1,500.
Right. Yeah, I think the only other comment I had beyond the timelines was as long as it was addressing the outcomes that were noted in your briefing note initially around the drowning hedge barrier drainage piece within respect to maintaining the appropriate stormwater management system in place. That needs to be maintained in relation to the park. I think as long as that's intact and those are the outcomes, I'm in support.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm in support of assignment 1, assignment 2, and the 1,500 for storm management function. I think the storm management function is an important facet of this report. People are still thinking you can cover everything over and be hunky-dory. It's not the case. The storm management system as it functions right now is part of the overall control for a 100-year storm, and to cover it in, you're gonna have a potential flooding beyond the current floodlines.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm in support. I do have a question. I know there's a tree planting project at Bourne Park kind of happening in the background. I'm just wondering if that would impact any of this study happening, or if that's something they need to be considering while doing some of this data gathering. We know.
So through Mr. Chair, I think we'll inform our consultants, certainly that we have some additional plantings that are taking place, and let them know where those are expected, so that they can take that into account if it happens to be within the scope of work.
Okay, thanks. And I mean, I'm just wondering if you had a map of what the actual scope is. I mean, it says in here, limited to physical hard surface playground area plus stormwater ditches immediately surrounding the play area, but do we actually have a map that's outlining it exactly, so we're all on the same page?
So through Mr. Chair, I think in the background here, as staff would work through this with the consultants, I think we are all on the same page, and what we'll be sure to do is when we sort of sign that contract to retain their services, we'll make sure that that's all included and documented.
Okay, good, thank you.
Good. I'm supportive of what's proposed. My position on this is the last review of this park, and the recommendations that come out of this, if there are any, is the last time. I feel that we've looked at this enough, and so this will be, like I said, so I hope that council's going to be satisfied with this final review of the park and the how the stormwater management works and the safety concern if there are any, and then because the amount of staff resources we put into constantly reviewing this facility is becoming draining for the corporation. So let's get it looked at, get it done, and consider the topic closed. So those are my comments.
Draining. Good word.
Draining. All right.
We have a mover and seconder.
Any last, all in favor? Okay, that's carried. All right. This is a zoning bylaw amendment to deem it complete.
Just gonna bring this Banks over.
All right. I know, I tried to pull them on too, and they don't stick as well. All right, Ms. Banks, welcome.
There we go. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council. The purpose of this report is for council to deem the application complete for a zoning amendment for the property known municipally as 1873 Town Line Road. This zoning application is a condition of consent from 2021. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Yes, ma'am.
That report PD 2024-006 entitled zoning bylaw amendment application D14 QUI request for council to deem the application either complete or incomplete be received, and that council deem the application to be complete, and that staff be directed to proceed with the notice in accordance with section 3 and section 5 of OREG 545-06 of the Planning Act as amended.
You're gonna move for that, please. Councilor Spillis, Councilor Goida.
Yeah.
Any questions or concerns for Ms. Banks? Councilor Hurst?
Just one, and forgive me, because this predates my time on council, Ms. Banks, but can you maybe just share why this application took multiple years? Like I've read through and there's like oodles of documentation here, but I'm curious, just maybe in your own words, just to help me understand, you know, the length of this and why it finally came to being today.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair. After the consent application was approved by Land Division, there was some delay in having the applicant submit for zoning amendment, and by that time, they had to go through the pre-consultation. There was a delay in getting that application received from them. After the pre-consultation was done, then for them to submit the zoning amendment application, there was some delay on the applicant's part on submitting it to the township. And then there were quite a few issues arising regarding the property. And so till we worked around all of those concerns from township staff and the agencies and the consultants, it brought us to this point.
Yeah, thank you. It seemed like a very delayed timeline, but just you explaining, some applicant delays and what have you, I think is helpful just for me to understand. I was more if there was any concerns, but ultimately if it's coming to council today, you've gone through your internal processes here, so I'm comfortable with that. Thank you.
And I feel that not everyone in the public is aware, and I'll look at Ms. Whitefox to make sure I'm not speaking incorrectly, but if you come for consent, then the entire property comes under scrutiny for zoning. So if you have something operating and you maybe don't have proper zoning, then it very much so becomes under the scrutiny of the township. And that may not be known to residents, and then when they all of a sudden are encountering, well, you need to get proper zoning for this use, they're like, what do you mean? I just want a severance. And it becomes a lengthy process. So you could probably describe that better than I just did, but
Right, so through you, Mr. Chair, that's exactly right. One of the conditions that is set during consent, so there's multiple conditions that are set by both the township and the county, is zoning compliance for both the retained and the proposed severed parcel. And so the applicant is under the burden to provide zoning compliance for both. And so oftentimes what will happen is maybe there's a use, whether it's been long standing or not, there's a use that doesn't comply. And so that can sometimes result in compliance through a zoning amendment. And that's why we're here with this application, to make sure that before the severance goes ahead, again, because you're creating a new sensitive land use through the new lot, you want to make sure the adjacent lot that it's being severed from, those two uses are going to be able to be next to each other. So
yeah, I just don't know if everybody's aware of that, right? You just think, oh, I'm gonna get a consent, and all of a sudden you check box, oh, what's this one? And it has a significant, process. So I'm glad to see. I was dealing with this file a year ago. I believe they had to get an extension because of timelines. I think COVID played some part in the delay as well. So I'm glad to see that we're at the point that it's deemed complete. Anyways.
Okay.
Good.
I just comment, I guess as staff to sort of discuss a little bit further. The holding provision, I know there's certain things in it that the source water has indicated they want certain things are done, and understand they're not, they would not hold up the deeming this complete, but the concern is that they do this before the actual zoning is enacted. Can you just comment briefly on the holding provision?
Yes, so through Mr. Chair, a holding provision is something that can be applied at the time that zoning is approved. And it can have certain conditions that have to be met before the use is actually legal. And so a holding provision does require the applicant to come back to council in the public and submit an application to have that holding provision lifted. And so in this case, what's being recommended is that site plan control be a condition of the holding provision, meaning that prior to the use becoming legal, they have to fulfill that site plan condition. So it's just it's an extra way to control any outstanding items that maybe haven't been fully addressed at the zoning stage. Maybe we need more detail and it's more appropriate for site plan, but it's just another way to control the use and to make sure that those various conditions are satisfied before the use becomes legal.
Yeah, thank you. Can staff just help me and the public understand, is this use of storing vehicles allowed on the property as zoned right now?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, the use is not legal, which is the applicant has recognized that through an application for rezoning.
Okay, so they've been they've been using the land inappropriately up to this point. And now because of the severance, it's kind of kickstarted bringing it into compliance. At what point do we say that's not a use of that property?
So, through you, Mr. Chair, when there's an illegal use, this is not specific to this property, but generally when there's an illegal use, there's a few ways that compliance can be achieved. It can be through ceasing the use and you just remove it. Or there could be the attempt to legalize the use through a zoning bylaw amendment or another planning act application, whatever that may be. And so in this case, the property owner is attempting to legalize the use. And so in general, municipalities where there is a good faith effort to legalize use and to achieve compliance, there isn't active enforcement that takes place. That's an approach that is supported by the court system as well. So that's what West Lynch does currently.
So I just want to add to that. This is very much so the opinion of the applicant that they have been operating legally for, I'd say 20 years. Now there's differences of opinions on whether the applicant has some documentation that they point to. We ask for other documentation. End of the day, we're at the right spot. We're at a zoning amendment application, but this use has been ongoing. I'll stay away from whether it was legal or illegal for decades. So I think the impact to the neighbors has been well known for a very long time. And I would have challenges if this started last year, then that would work, say 5 years ago, because you need 5 years to get consent. And it's brand new, this scale, that kind of thing. And you know, the neighbors are, but this has been ongoing for years, whether it's illegal or legal. We'll leave that discussion for another day. But, you know, I think that's why the township has been working towards legalizing it partially because of the historical amount of time that it's been there. But there's been challenges for the applicant as well, so.
I just, I'm wondering if when you, I think I read that you're gonna send it out to the neighboring, is there a public?
Yes, there's a public circulation that's included,
Circulation.
yes.
Could we please include West Lynch Lake Association in that?
Hold on, are they within the 120 meters?
So when I attended the meetings, I got a lot of feedback about this. So I would just like them to know what's happening and if they choose to.
Statutorily, is that, did I say that right? We're required to circulate 120 meters. I would suggest that Courtney can.
On the back of the property.
Well, we'll find out in a second, but I would prefer, other than us deviating from what we're required to do, maybe Ms. White Fox could email you a direct link to is it posted or?
And then I can forward it on. That's
Yes.
fine. I'm fine with that.
Because then that keeps us within what we're supposed to do, but also you're able to forward the
I thought
information.
we were able to go beyond. We just had to make sure we were doing what was legislated.
You are correct.
Yeah.
Just trying to stay up a slippery slope.
It's just for comment, right?
Mayor, just want to point out that there will be a public meeting associated with this, which will be made public, and they can attend and express their concerns or whatever they say.
So through Mr. Chair, what I'd suggest is this information is going to be available publicly on the website. It'll be on the mapping. If West Lynch Lake Association would like to be registered as an interested party, they can just make that request to the township. And then interested parties don't necessarily have to be within the circulation boundary, but we add them to the list and then they'll be circulated as if they were.
Can I ask a favor? Could you send, once you have that link, can you send it to me? Thank you.
Yeah, we'll make sure they're informed. I just didn't want to make it an extension of what we're statutorily required to do versus let's get them signed up on the proper spot so that they are circulated.
Yeah. Whatever.
It does, yeah, that's fine.
I hope they get it. Yeah, I believe we're deeming it complete.
Sure, I can move that. We do.
Seconded by Councillor Floyd. Any last comments on this file before we call the vote? All in favor? It's carried. Correspondence, this ERO posting. Do you know anything about this?
Yes. Include some information in the package. So through Mr. Chair, this is an interesting update to this sort of, I don't want to call it historic, but it's an old permit to take water related to the Lafarge pit. It borders into Guelph-Ramasa and in Puslinch, and you'll note that it's from 2019. And they did make an update, just advising the public that this is still active. And this is because I believe Lafarge is sort of starting their process to reactivate that site. And it does note that the original, or the proposal, the comment period has not changed from the original proposal. With that said, Kyle Davis from Source Water Protection has reached out and I think he's fairly confident that they will accept comments from agencies. And so he is working on that with Guelph-Ramasa as well. You'll note in the package, there is the comments that were submitted on behalf of Puslinch in 2019, that was in August. And so sort of Kyle has said there'll be more information to come on this, and he's just reviewing it to see the information that he can get access to, and then what may have changed from his comments from 2019, and he'll bring that information back to our council.
Is the city of Guelph circulated on this thing too?
So through Mr. Chair, they are. Source Water did not make any requests on their behalf, and wouldn't be commenting on their behalf.
No, I know that.
Yeah, okay.
It's just, they expropriated the Doline pit, and this is downstream, and it's 30 million liters a day. They may be concerned about that, or at least have a look at it, but as long as they're circulated and they're aware, and that's fine. I remember this file. We met with representatives from Lafarge, and we had concerns about, they wanted to blast right up to the 10 side road allowance, and there's all sorts of things going on, but generally speed off. Save my comments. Anything from you, Councilor Hurst?
Nope, I'm supportive.
Okay.
So usually when we see these permits to take water, we'd always reference that for especially Blue Triton, 10 years is too long. We wanted a 5 year. Did they get a 5 year? They put a 5 year on it, didn't they? Anyways, we always, or I feel like councils of the day would put in a request that, a similar request, but we didn't really have any justification behind it. Would Kyle be able to look at that, or, and I'd like to see if you can report back on, supporting that position, because 10 years is a long time. There's a lot of changing, call them dynamics of rain and weather, and, we had years of drought there, and now this summer was wettest, So to give this 10-year permit is concerned. I just want the support behind it, other than just an arbitrary ask, so. Great.
So this is kind of from a while ago. Hydrologist Stan had mentioned quite a while ago about potentially trying to increase monitoring within the township. And I'm just wondering, any opportunity to ask different pits and things to provide a space to put in different well monitorings, or put in different, I don't know whether it's rain gauges or, something to help us gather data. Is this something maybe Stan during this process could be, I don't know if this fits into this, but he was just, mentioning quite a while ago about being able to partner and add different monitoring systems.
Through Mr. Chair, staff will take that away, and we all request during this consultation if that can be brought up.
Okay, do we move over in a second? It's just for information.
Just for information, yeah.
Councilor Goyette? Mr. Wilson? General comment? Anybody else have more comments on? Okay, all in favor? That's carried. All right. That was 10.1, council reports. Reports after that, yeah. Anything from council? Here's updates. Ms. White Fox and I have a scheduled meeting with the new CEO of Public Conservation as a meet and greet. Is that Friday?
Friday.
So just say Wednesday. It's Friday. That's it. I don't really have anything else we do. I think we're chatting about that we need to tell them.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we did, I'm not sure if we confirmed with council last time we met about our meeting with the ministry staff. I believe it's on October the 3rd.
Oh, yes.
And that's just regarding the OMERS pension plan administration, just to discuss that with the ministry staff as the regulator.
Yeah, that's coming up. And then we did meet with MECP staff that approved ECAs. That went okay. When can we update them on that? That should probably be closed. At some point, maybe we can arrange that. Give them a verbal update on that one. I think that's it. Okay, Mover Secretary, will receive that wonderful report.
Compelling.
Put my name with that one.
All right. We have a lot going on. We just don't know what, all right. What was their council? Oh, I did councils first, because it was the title. Messed me up.
No worries.
It's all good. Wondered why they were before the mayor. I thought you were just changing something. Give them a chance to speak before me. Take it on the chin. Okay. When are we going into closed? After bylaws?
Yes, there's just one bylaw. We're just giving the shooting range bylaw its first reading. So it's the following bylaw to be read for the first time in open council, and that's bylaw 2024-0. I don't know if we have a number for it yet. We haven't assigned it.
058.
58, okay.
Is shooting range an appropriate term for that thing? Yeah. It's
The
okay.
term, yeah.
All right.
Being a bylaw to regulate, prohibit, and otherwise control noise from shooting ranges in the township of Sludge.
Okay, move for that, please. Councilor Bailey, Councilor Hurst, all in favor? That's carried. Any announcements from anyone? Okay.
The showcase is coming up.
Yeah.
Someone want to speak to that?
To you, Mr. Chair, our municipal clerk has been really instrumental in organizing that, so she might like to give us more information.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, so the Passage Community Showcase is taking place on October 5th at our PCC grounds, as well as in the orc rink and gym. So we have over 60 vendors who will be attending that day. The event will be taking place from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. There is no fee to enter. Everyone's welcome to come. We will be asking for donations towards our digital sign at the PCC and its replacement, but we're very excited to have everyone come out.
Great work going on for that.
Sorry, I should have listed it. That's okay.
Give her.
So through you, Mr. Chair, we do have the County Economic Development Committee is organizing the BRNE interviews with the downtown communities. So those letters will be going out shortly with like a little gift basket to thank those that want to participate in those interviews. Laura, our communications coordinator, is going to be participating in the interviews, so it'll be really great to have a local presence in on those. And we have a really great list that the township staff was able to contribute to of the businesses that we want to target. So it's not just in the downtowns, out of Morrison, there's a couple in our agricultural areas, and then a few up in Arkle. So we're really looking forward to that, and the results of that will be presented sometime later this year.
Great work.
Good.
All right, we don't need a resolution for announcements, right? All right, I believe we're gonna go into closed session. Maybe resolution.
The council should go into closed session under section 239 of the Municipal Act for the purpose of a confidential item 14.1, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and this is regarding a property assessment matter.
Do you want to keep Mary? in this?
Sure. She left, but I can ask her.
So that's not listed in the addendum.
We added it as an addition, I think.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure it's listed.
Yeah, sorry, I asked Courtney about it. So can I get a move for that, please? Councilor Hurst, Councilor Lewis, all in favor? Carried.
Is that fine, your chair?
All right, so I actually have some resolutions coming out of close.
Yes, I do. The council moves into open session at 2:12 p.m.
Can I move for that? Councilor Hurst, Councilor Lewis, all in favor? It's carried.
And the council receives the confidential item 14.1, litigation or potential litigation, including matters for administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board regarding a property assessment matter, and that staff proceed as directed.
Move for that, please. Councilor Bailey, Councilor Hurst, all in favor? It's carried. Is that right? Any business arising from the closed session? Nope. Any notice of motion today? Nope. Any new business? Confirmatory bylaw, please.
Should the following bylaw be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council, bylaw 2024-059, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council for the corporation of the township of Plissken, should its meeting held on the 25th day of September 2024.
Okay, move for that, please. Councilor Goya, Councilor Lewis, all in favor? Carried. Adjournment.
Council hereby adjourns at 2:13 p.m.
Mover, please. Councilor Lewis, Councilor Bailey, all in favor? Carried. Everyone.